Shine between those showers will be down across parts of England and Wales, whereas again towards the north there, certainly across the highest ground in Scotland, still a bit of a wintry flavour to some of those outbreaks of rain with some snow across the mountains. Temperatures still quite chilly for the time of year, peaking at around about 7 to 10 in the north, up to 14 or 15 down towards the south. That's into the upper 50s in Fahrenheit.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GB News was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GB News exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends. Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of October. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
Now, asylum system failure. Yes, the Home Office has wasted billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on migrant hotels and other luxury perks for illegal migrants, all while the government contractors rake in hefty profits.
Well, of course, the issue around asylum accommodation is only really the net result of a failure to control our borders. And we've seen this year already, we've passed a number of Channel migrants who came in the whole of last year.
Looking for investment? Yes, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves jets off to Saudi Arabia for investment talks with the other rich oil nations after Labour blasted the Tories for cozying up to the same regime only a few years ago.
Well, while Reeves is in the Middle East begging for oil money, here at home we continue to reject it. More than 2,000 Scotland-based jobs are at risk as oil and energy services group Petrofac has applied for administration.
The landmark renters' bill becomes law today, but critics say that the rent control measures within it will make things worse by reducing the supply of rental homes. The anti-landlord measure in the bill might be popular, but are they counterproductive?
And the King is in Staffordshire today to unveil the UK's first national memorial commemorating LGBT armed forces personnel.
You see, this net zero nonsense, which I suspect has been one of the triggers for a lot of our businesses in oil and gas going bust or losing contracts, which is exactly what happened to this particular company, I think is really just typical of how a government have come up with a plan, and let's blame the Conservatives are coming up with the net zero nonsense, and then Labour following it through and coming up with something that is completely destructive to our economy. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, although I think we often talk about net zero as if it was sort of invented in 2017, 2018 when Theresa May... I mean, yes, the target of net zero by 2050 was invented then. But before Theresa May instituted that, we had a target of net 80% reduction by 2050. That was put into law in the Climate Change Act, 2008. That was Ed Miliband's act when he was Climate Change Secretary.
That's why he's so hot on it now.
And then that governed the entirety of energy policy throughout the last 14 years of Conservative government, the last 2 years of the previous Labour government, and now. The Conservatives amended that act to make it net zero rather than net 80% reduction. But this has informed our energy policy since 2008.
But why did they not change it when the Conservatives were in? They could have done something about it. Why did they double down on it and actually give us a specific date, which literally they plucked out of the air because it made no sense at all?
Well, the Conservatives voted for it in 2008. There were only 5 Conservative MPs who rebelled against it. I think one was Anne Widdecombe, actually. But there are a few others who are names that people watching this channel might be familiar with. I think Christopher Chope as well from memory. But goodness me, this was a cross-party consensus for a long, long time that we should prioritise deindustrialisation, that we should prioritise getting carbon down as much as possible and, frankly, forget about any sort of consequences that might have economically. But now we end up in the position where our Chancellor is hurrying off to the Middle East to talk to Saudi Arabia, a country that couldn't give a fig for net zero, and they're so rich because of it that we're begging for some of their money.
It's just utterly absurd. I don't know how she thinks this looks or how any of them think this looks. I don't understand why they can't see what I know the viewers can see, the listeners can hear, and what we can all see, somehow they don't see it. Well, listen, send us your thoughts, your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Katie Bowen.
Nana, Tom, thank you and good afternoon. The headlines at 12:04. David Lammy is expected to face questions in Parliament today following the arrest of a migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released from prison. Ethiopian national Hadush Kabatu is expected to be deported within days. He was jailed for 12 months in September for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. Kabatu was wrongly freed from HMP Chelmsford on Friday instead of being sent to an immigration detention centre. The asylum seeker, who had been living at the Bell Hotel in Epping, travelled from Chelmsford to London and was arrested yesterday in Finsbury Park. Well, Housing Secretary Steve Reid told GB News Breakfast that David Lammy will announce tougher measures around prison security today.
We know we've got a broken justice system. I hear what you say the Conservatives have said, but they broke the criminal justice system. Remember, they ran out of prison places, so there was nowhere to put people that got a custodial sentence. They sacked a third of the people working in that service. And when you break a system, then problems happen like the one we've seen. Yes, catastrophic. So David Lammy will be answering questions in the Commons behind me today, and he will be announcing the new checks that would be put in place to make sure this kind of thing cannot happen again. It's unacceptable. It shouldn't have happened then. We need to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
The Home Office has squandered billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on asylum accommodation, according to a report. The Home Affairs Committee has told the government to get a grip on the UK's asylum accommodation system, labelling it as failed, chaotic and expensive. The committee also warned that without a clear plan, Sir Keir Starmer's government risks under-delivery and consequently undermining public trust still further. The Home Office say that the government is furious about the number of illegal migrants in this country and in hotels, promising to close every single asylum hotel. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith told GB News Breakfast that the cost of the asylum hotel system is completely unacceptable.
It's a disgusting waste of money. If people haven't been even collecting overpayments, that's maladministration. Heads should roll. Permanent secretary heads should roll. It's completely unacceptable. And, you know, there's been plenty of reports that say the Home Office is not fit for purpose. This is yet another example.
Elsewhere, more than 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scotland as oil and gas company Petrofac enters administration. The Aberdeen-based firm, which operates in North Sea oil, was plunged into difficulty last week when a major contract was cancelled. In a statement today, Petrofac said that the group's operations will continue to trade and options for restructuring the company, including a possible merger or acquisition, are being explored. The news comes as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is in Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth ahead of the budget on the 26th of November. The Chancellor is aiming to make progress on a trade deal with the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh. The visit comes as new figures show investment in machinery from Britain's manufacturers has dropped from a 10-year high, with factory bosses warning that their businesses are hitting a critical juncture. Social housing landlords in England will face court action and compensation orders if they fail to improve conditions for tenants quickly. The rules come under a new law described as the lasting legacy of Awab Ishaq, who died aged 2 from a respiratory condition caused by prolonged exposure to mould in his family's housing association flat in Rochdale. His death prompted the passage of Awab's law, with a requirement for landlords to fix reported hazards in social housing more speedily and rehouse tenants in safe accommodation if necessary. Hurricane Melissa is expected to make landfall later today in Jamaica, with the government there ordering mass evacuations for large parts of the country. Authorities have now upgraded the hurricane to a Category 5 storm, bringing life-threatening flash flooding and landslides with winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Melissa is the 13th hurricane in this year's Atlantic season, which typically ends in November. And US President Donald Trump has met with Japan's Emperor Naruhito this morning as part of a tour around Asia. He was greeted by the Emperor at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. President Trump will later head to South Korea before meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two countries have reportedly agreed the framework of a trade deal ahead of that meeting. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now let's get a quick look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3344 and €1.1460. The price of gold is £3,016.65 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,645 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon. Britain. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been squandered on asylum hotels because of what is being described as a failed, chaotic and expensive system.
The Home Affairs Committee has found that a series of failures allowed the estimated cost of the 10-year asylum accommodation contracts to soar from £4.5 billion to £15.3 billion.
Now, this comes as David Lammy is expected to face questions in Parliament today following the arrest of a migrant sex offender who was mistakenly or accidentally released from prison on Friday and then rearrested yesterday. He's expected to be deported later this week. Not David Lammy, this guy, Hadish Kabati.
Well, the government has promised to end the housing of asylum seekers in hotels by the end of the Parliament in 2029.
The GBNews' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins us now. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Well, I'll try and hold it together after your Lammy deportation remark. In terms of the Kabatu saga and what is happening to him next, I have to say, you know, despite asking the Home Office a number of times today, what is happening with him at the moment? Where is he? Has he been returned, for instance, to prison service custody? Is he now at an immigration deportation centre? They say if when they've got something to say, they'll let us know. But clearly, the public would like to know that he is safely out of the country as promised. There's no doubt, I think, that senior officials will be on the phone to their counterparts in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia with a view to getting Kabatu on a plane and across there as soon as possible. We're told that it will take place in the coming days. But of course, that is one high-profile offender who was mistakenly released. But he is just the tip of the iceberg in what we've been seeing in a prison service that's not just creaking at the seams, it's deep in crisis, with 262 people released mistakenly in the year to March this year. So much of that actually taking place under the watch of this current government. And I'm afraid that a lot of the sort of extra caseload that the prison service staff are having to deal with is as a result of some of the changes that this government has put through. For instance, the early release of prisoners after serving 40% of their sentence in prison, as opposed to what was traditional, the traditional 50% of your prison service behind bars, and then you are released on probation after that. Well, of course, to deal with the prison overcrowding, Shabana Mahmood, who was the MOJ Secretary of State then, now here at the Home Office, of course, decided to enact that policy, and that brought about a very significant extra workload for those prison officers. Of course, it was a ghastly mistake by that prison officer in releasing Kabatu, but it comes against this backdrop of the really, really difficult and huge caseload that the individual prison officers and staff are having to deal with on a daily basis.
Gets to the very heart of such an issue that people have with the entire asylum system, whether it's the inability to hold people who should be behind bars behind those bars, or at the very start of the process, the government saying do not come by small boat, but then offering hotel accommodation to those that do. Almost every end of the process, it seems that the government says one thing and then does another. It generates such frustration from the voting British public.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tom. And in terms of the asylum accommodation issue, that damning report from that Commons committee there saying how clearly the system is set up under the previous government, the contracts were just not robust enough. You've got now the current government blaming the previous government, but the truth of it is these contracts and the fine detail, the fine print of them, were actually drawn up by permanent secretaries, permanent staff here at the Home Office and their legal teams who are still in place. The same teams that are in place that we hear so much about the Home Office being not fit for purpose and being dysfunctional, that's the same permanent staff that were here under the Conservatives that are still in there, that are managing this crisis. And as far as the hotel accommodation is concerned, the contracts that were drawn up, you know, were badly drawn up. But also, you know, there were some aspects of the clauses that are being underutilised. The ability, for instance, to pull back some funds from contractors that are not functioning as they should, or indeed are making excess profits. They've just not been doing that. They've not been keeping on top of that under the previous government, and certainly under this government as well.
And Mark, is there any way they can claw back some of the money that they've overpaid a lot of these contractors?
Yeah, well, yeah, they can if they'd get their finger out and actually do it. Yeah, there's many millions of pounds that they can, as we speak, claw back. It's a matter of doing that, of applying themselves and getting that money back from those contractors. In the meantime, of course, the government tells us that it's committed to ending the use of asylum seeker hotels. But really, the number in asylum seeker hotels hasn't gone down all that much since the previous government. It went down very significantly from some almost 50,000 asylum seekers who are being accommodated in hotels down to around about the 30,000 mark, but it stayed roughly at that figure. And one of the reasons why, of course, it stayed at that figure is because of the very significant numbers who cross the English Channel. Almost 37,000 this year already, on course to be another record year. So the hotels that were only ever meant to be an emergency stopgap to put them somewhere before they then move on to the dispersal accommodation in towns and cities across the country is actually being used as a more medium to longer term solution for these asylum seekers.
Mark White, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. I mean, there are literally these companies. So you've got Mears, Serco, Clear Springs, Ready Homes and Stay Belvedere Hotels. A lot of these companies have made an absolute fortune out of this.
So much money.
So much money. It's unbelievable. And of course, that's taxpayers' money.
And billions of it. But let's speak to Karen McIver now, the Branch Secretary for Reform UK in Epping Forest. Of course, Epping was one of the epicentres of perhaps one of the most famous asylum hotels in the country. Karen, what do you make of this report? Just the gargantuan amount of money, frankly, the waste that successive governments have been responsible for.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on. I just feel that it's broken. Everything is broken at the moment, and I just think it's one story after another of mistake after mistake. And I just think that we need to doge all of these contracts and find out exactly what's going on. I feel like the government panic. I feel like when they, they don't plan, they just react, and it's just mistake after mistake, whether it's Conservatives or Labour, and I just think we need radical change.
Radical change, but what, in your view, do you think they could do? Because we've got these people coming across all the time. They don't seem to want to do much to stop it. Instead, we're now working out how to house people when they come here. What, in your view, would be a solution?
So I just think we need a lot more transparency. I think they think the British people are silly, and they play with our money, our hard-working taxpayers' money, like it's a toy. This is serious stuff. The country is really struggling, and I just think they need professional people in professional positions to actually oversee all of these contracts. It will be very interesting to know what procedures they've gone through before they've actually been awarded any of these contracts, because I know from my work environment, you know, there's a lot of robust stuff we have to do before we give contracts, and I just feel that this has all just been done so quickly and rushed and panicked. And, you know, our prison service, we're letting serious people out early. You know, your reporter alluded to just there that there's 262 other cases. You know, where are those people? What's happening with those people? Are they found? Are they still out there? Why aren't they found? You know, it's just mistake after mistake. And I hope and pray that Reform get in to be the next government, and I trust Nigel to sort this out, because the people I speak to on the street, which is, you know, every single weekend, many evenings, everybody is putting so much hope into Reform, because all we hear is mistake after mistake, and it's very, very distressing.
Tale. Beyond professional people drawing up tighter contracts, I mean, what is the Reform policy in terms of actually dealing with people who are already here? I mean, ideally, of course, the boats are stopped, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. There are hundreds of thousands of people who... would they go in tents? Would they go on the streets, as they do in some European countries? Would there be some form of hotel accommodation? Where are they going to go?
Well, I think Nigel's been very sort of vocal with his plans. I mean, as regards the overcrowding in the prisons, the foreign prisoners will be sent back to their own countries. As regards the people that continue to come, Nigel said that he's going to turn the boats around as soon as possible. As soon as possible, he will turn the boats around. He said that from day one. He's the only one that said he would take us out of the ECHR. It's just common sense stuff, you know. What we're seeing at the moment is just like really erratic. It's like there's no plan, and you know, even with the asylum hotels across the country, people are just being dumped. You know, why aren't they stopping the boats? This is never going to stop until we actually have a proper plan. The Conservatives have proved they didn't have one. And Labour have proved they haven't got one. And, you know, we can only, you know, locally our elections have been cancelled, OK? And this is the sort of thing they're doing to trying to stop us getting in. I mean, I'm not an expert on the prison service or the police, but I'm a normal British citizen, and I see what goes on. And I just feel that we're just being conned by our government at the moment. We're just being, you know, and with social media and amazing channels like yourself that give normal people a voice, we're actually seeing what goes on. I mean, had this guy that got lost on at the weekend, had he not been so high profile, we wouldn't have known about it. And that's what's so worrying. As a mother, you know, local community person, that's what I find so worrying. We just don't know what's going on.
All right, Karen McAvoy, thank you very much. She's the Bronx Secretary for Reform UK in Epping. Although I would say, as she said, alluded to Reform UK, it's always easy to say this stuff when you're not in power. So saying that you can send people back immediately, well, you need returns agreements with certain countries to be able to do that. So it's not so straightforward. And turning the boats back, well, you need the agreement from, of course, the Coast Guard and Border Force, and they may not wish to do that because they'll see that you're breaking certain sea rules.
Well, this is why some people argue for a safe third country that is willing to take people that's not from that country, like for example, Rwanda. But of course, that never quite got off the ground. Well, we should say that the Home Office have issued a statement. They've said this government is furious about the number of illegal migrants in this country and in hotels. That is why we close every single asylum hotel, saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. We have already taken action on closing hotels, slashing asylum costs by nearly £1 billion, and exploring the use of military bases and disused properties.
Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this one. Argentina's maverick libertarian president, Javier Milei, has led his party to a landslide victory in last night's midterm elections. This is a significant win for the radical right-winger after defining the first 2 years of his presidency with chainsaw-inspired spending cuts and free market reforms. But after the break...
Looking for investment, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves jets off to Saudi Arabia for investment talks with that rich oil nation after Labour blasted the Tories for cozying up to the same regime only a few years ago.
Well, all of that and indeed much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Daily Mail going on a headline, woke gardens to tackle absenteeism, and stop asking people's questions, it makes them anxious. Now, of course it makes you anxious.
It's your job.
Yeah, so I mean, I get what they're going, and it's very easy to go with the popular view here. But I think they're not saying all pupils. They're asking to take into account that there may be, in certain sets of the classes, neurodivergent people, autistic, for whom it does make it. So I do work with children who've been in care, and sometimes I've got people in the room who are autistic, and because I'm energetic and stuff, I've got to be very careful how I approach them. So sometimes, if I'm asking a question, I won't even look.
But Chris, I don't think that you can break up. You can sit and say, well, we've got Dawn, better not ask her that. Chris, I can't ask him this. And whatever. You know, you can't keep differentiating and cutting things up like that. I think you have to relook at what teachers are expected to do.
I think if we're preparing children for the outside world, we have to be tougher with them than we are. Now, you can't wrap them up in cotton wool. The world does not revolve around them. They have to toughen up, sorry.
And you will be asked questions in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. So are you saying that exclude them from the classroom so that you can concentrate on the main body?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, okay. I mean, okay, that might be a solution. Well, so you go back to having schools that cater for...
Do you see when people say questions make you anxious? Yes, I was anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all are. I was anxious. I was anxious when I went to the track, and I was a World Cup athlete. I was still anxious when you go to the final. Yeah, we get that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past midday. Now, we're just going to show you some live pictures of Kingston in Jamaica, which is preparing for an absolutely enormous storm. Yes, Storm Melissa is due to hit Jamaica, and there have been evacuation orders across the island.
Well, they're saying that it strengthens to a Category 5, which could be the strongest hurricane Jamaica has experienced in decades. That is according to the country's meteorological service. And they forecast up to 40 inches of rainfall in some areas, potentially catastrophic flash flooding and landslides.
So the calm before the storm at the moment, but we're keeping an eye on that one for when it hits.
Well, this is also the calm before the storm. Rachel Reeves leading a UK delegation to Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth with less than a month to go before the budget.
Well, the Chancellor is aiming to make progress on a trade deal with the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh.
And this comes as previously Labour branded the Saudi Arabia regime murderous and continually highlighted the country's human rights record when Tories were in power.
Well, joining us now is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, who is busy on GBNews today. Olivia, slightly embarrassing for the Chancellor to sort of go cap in hand to this country.
Well, it does feel a bit like that. There's a lot of talk of hypocrisy this morning because when the Conservatives were in power, both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer said that the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson shouldn't be going cap in hand from dictator to dictator. Keir Starmer, of course, spent most of his career as a human rights lawyer, and he fought passionately against Britain having any kind of professional relationship with countries with the death penalty. And of course, last year, 196 people were put to death in Saudi Arabia. So this is all pretty embarrassing for Rachel Reeves. But of course, she is desperate to get some sort of trade deal done before the budget. And part of that is because she wants the OBR to include deals that she is in the process of making in their forecast. So the issue that Rachel Reeves has is that many billion-pound black hole, arguments over how many billion-pound black hole, is set to get even bigger as the OBR downgrade Britain's productivity. And what she's trying to do is to get future trade deals factored in to that report. It seems unlikely that she's going to manage to do this because it doesn't look as though this trade deal with the Gulf nations is going to get over the line. There was some talk of it being agreed by December, but for now it doesn't quite look like it will be.
Now, how do they square the circle? Because, of course, Keir Starmer is a human rights lawyer. He's obviously been someone who's, in a sense, opposed the death penalty in foreign countries, spent a lot of his career doing that. Yet there's been 196 executions in 2022 and so on and so forth. We supposedly parade ourselves as a very morally righteous country, and these guys, the Labour Party, at the helm of that.
Well, exactly, and I think it just shows how much harder it is to be in power than it is to be in opposition, and it was much easier for the Prime Minister and Chancellor to criticise the Prime Minister for doing exactly what they are doing now. Most economists think that some sort of deal with the Gulf nations would probably be a good idea economically, but I think some Labour backbenchers will have some issues with this as well, given Saudi Arabia's human rights record. So we could be on for some more discord within the Labour Party, something which we've seen quite a lot of.
Well, there's a thread we can draw right around the world on this story. I mean, we've been cozying up to China as well, allegedly collapsing a spy trial for two alleged Chinese spies in this country, just so we can get a sweeter trade deal with that country. We had the Prime Minister, who has previously not been a big fan of Donald Trump, literally bending down on the floor to pick up Donald Trump's papers for him. It seems that wherever you go in the world, from the Far East to the Middle East to the United States of America, the UK is in such a subservient position simply because we've got no domestic growth to speak of.
Well, I think the point that you raised about China is a very important one. The government is really struggling to shake off these accusations that it allowed the China spying case to collapse simply because it wanted closer economic ties with China. It's a really, really tricky one, and now it does feel as though Rachel Reeves is going cap in hand, as you say. So I think this is going to be a big, big issue at the next budget, and I think we should really keep an eye on what Labour MPs are saying about this, because there's been plenty of discord within Labour. We know that Labour MPs, they don't feel as though they owe Keir Starmer their seats in a way that perhaps Tony Blair's MPs in 97 felt they owed Tony Blair their seats. They feel as though they have the right to be disloyal about Keir Starmer because he is actually an unpopular Prime Minister and was actually unpopular even before he got elected, even while the Labour Party was very popular indeed. So I think there is a chance of quite a big backlash from Labour MPs who do not like Saudi Arabia's human rights record, and that could cause real problems for the Chancellor at a time when she needs all the friends she can get, quite frankly.
And also the irony is that more than 2,000 jobs are at risk as an oil and gas company is going into administration.
Well, yeah, and of course there is this big question mark over what Keir Starmer is going to do about Ed Miliband, because it looks as though the policy that Rachel Reeves is pursuing is very different from the one that Ed Miliband is pursuing. He is going hell for leather for net zero, and of course we do have our own oil supplies here in this country which he does not want to use, but could make us completely self-reliant on energy. So there's sort of lots of different things going on here, and it'll be really interesting to see whether Keir Starmer at his next reshuffle reshuffle, is able to get rid of Ed Miliband, because rumour on the street in Westminster was that he wanted to get rid of Ed Miliband at his last reshuffle and for whatever reason was unable to do so. I think that speaks again to the strange lack of power, the abyss of power at the very centre of number 10, despite this enormous majority.
In office, perhaps not in power. Well, I suppose we'll have to see. But Olivia Utley, thanks indeed for joining us. Who'd want to be Chancellor, eh?
I think I'd do a good job.
Oh, yeah?
I think
what
I
would you cut?
Well, I think the first thing I would do was I'd change around the national insurance thing. I'd get rid of that. I'd also get rid of that on private schools, and I'd tax.
Sounds like you've made the black hole a bit bigger there.
No, and then I'd tax income tax.
You do an income tax rise?
Absolutely.
Wow, interesting. OK, well, that's what this Chancellor's been rumoured to be doing, yeah?
Well, she said she wouldn't, though, so she's breaching the manifesto promise.
Gosh, well, very interesting. What would you do? gbnews.com/your say. Get involved. What would... I think I'd like to do tens of billions of pounds of spending cuts.
Yeah, I'd also cut the civil service. That would be...
I'd like to take the sort of lead from Javier Milei. There were 18 government departments in Argentina. He cut it down to 8.
I'd do that as well. Cut spending, big time, and sort out the NHS.
Well, lots more still to come on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon.
Yes, to Pads Andy, that's of course Prince Andrew, will leave Royal Lodge, but only if he and his ex-wife are each given a new house in Windsor.
Oh, goodness
me. They're not really
me.
in a position to be bargaining, are they?
Not really. Well, all of that and much more indeed after your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 12:34. Prisons are expected to begin enhanced checks before inmates are released after a migrant sex offender was mistakenly released from prison. Ethiopian national Hadush Kabatu is expected to be deported within days. He was jailed for 12 months in September for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. Labour Minister Steve Reid had this to say on GB News Breakfast.
David Lammy will be answering questions in the comments behind me today, and he will be announcing the new checks that would be put in place to make sure this kind of thing cannot happen again.
The Home Office has squandered billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on asylum accommodation, according to a report. The Home Affairs Committee has told the government to get a grip on the UK's asylum accommodation system, labelling it as failed, chaotic and expensive. More than 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scotland as oil and gas company Petrofac enters administration. The Aberdeen-based firm, which operates in North Sea oil, was plunged into difficulty last week when a major contract was cancelled. The news comes as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is in Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth ahead of the budget on the 26th of November. And Hurricane Melissa is expected to make landfall later today in Jamaica, with the government there ordering mass evacuations for large parts of the country. Authorities have now upgraded the hurricane to a Category 5 storm, bringing life-threatening flash flooding and landslides with winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Katie. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, more than 2,000 Scotland-based jobs are at risk as oil and energy services group Petrofac has applied for administration. But after the break...
The landmark renters bill becomes law today. But critics say that the rent control measures within it will make things worse by reducing the supply of rental homes. The anti-landlord measures in the bill might be popular, but are they counterproductive?
Well, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. There will be some bright weather out there today, even some sunshine in places, but also further blustery showers at first before more prolonged rain turns up later on. As one low departs to the east, another low turns up to the west. In between, northerly winds, feeling cool and bright spells along with showers. The showers most frequent across north and northeast Scotland. There'll also be a few showers continuing through the Midlands and eastern England, but the showers tend to fade into the afternoon as the next system approaches, that bringing some damp weather to Northern Ireland by the middle of the afternoon. All in all, it's going to continue to feel cold, but perhaps not as cold as it felt in places during the weekend. The wind's easing for a time as the next low starts to move in, and clear spells across much of Scotland later in the afternoon going into the evening. Showers tending to ease at this stage, but still continuing around coastal parts of northern Scotland. Here's the wet weather moving into western Scotland, northwest England, West Wales, and just clearing Northern Ireland during the evening. Increasingly damp across Wales and the southwest, but the rain tending to be light and patchy in many places. Then cloudy for many overnight, with those outbreaks of rain spilling eastwards. The rain heaviest to most persistent across northern and northwestern parts of the UK before clearing later, followed by further showers. So a changeable night to come. Rain for many places, but not wet all night. And in between, always some clear spells later on. Temperatures around the high single figures as we start off Tuesday. Tuesday is a bright start across this central swathe of the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, the Midlands, eastern England. Either side of that, we will see further showers. The showers most lively across western Scotland into central areas, and for the south of England as well, there'll be some prolonged showers in places. Continuing to feel cool, but not as cool as recent days.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Travellers on the A9 face restrictions at Inveralmond roundabout due to a broken down vehicle, so proceed with care. A 7.5-tonne weight restriction is enforced on the M48 for heavy goods vehicles until further notice. The M6 northbound in Lancashire between junctions 27 and 28 is congested due to a collision, closing one lane with a 20-minute delay. The M5 southbound in Devon between junctions 28 and 29 faces an incident, closing two lanes with an expected 1-hour delay. And on the trains, disruption continues on Greater Anglia between London Liverpool Street and Hackney Downs. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Welcome. If you just tuned in, it's fast approaching 41 minutes after midday. Now, the government's new renters' rights bill, because they have a lot of rights in it, has passed its final stages in Parliament.
Yeah, the government claims the bill will introduce vital protections for tenants. However, property experts are warning the bill could actually end up increasing rents as landlords sell up out of fear of being stuck with bad tenants and having their rents fixed by tribunals.
So what to make of this bill? Will it give renters the protections they need, or will it spook landlords and drive up the rents? Well, joining us now in the studio is Ben Hopkinson. He is a policy researcher. Ben, it feels to me as a landlord that this is utter madness. As a landlord, having read parts of it, I'm ready to flee the market.
Yeah, well, and you wouldn't be alone. We've already lost 300,000 private rental properties since 2016. And that's the kind of extra burdens. You can't deduct mortgage interest from tax payments. You have increasing regulatory concerns around EPCs, for example. And then this renters' rights bill will effectively ban rent increases unless you go through this crazy tribunal process.
Just explain what this tribunal process is, actually.
So if you wanted to raise the rent, after a year, as the market might increase, you can then, as a landlord, say, this is the new rent, but a tenant can say, no, I don't agree, I'm taking you to a tribunal. And the tribunal will never say that the rent should be higher than what the landlord asks. And whilst you're waiting for the tribunal to decide, the tenant pays the old rent. So that means that tenants have no incentive to not take you to a tribunal over any rental increase. and there are only 34 tribunal judges, so 5 million rental properties.
34 tribunal judges across the entirety of the country?
Yep, yeah, and there are 5 million private rental properties.
So that'll mean there'll be a long wait at the lower rent, and the landlord will just have to suck it up. The other part of this that I struggle with is the removal of no-fault eviction. So Section 21, which you can serve, and the tenant has 2 months with which to vacate the property, and you don't really have to give a reason. You could just simply be doing that. Under this, that's gone.
Well, the bill completely bans fixed-term tenancies. So if you agree with a tenant, we're going to have a 2-year rental term. At the end of the 2 years, the tenant can indefinitely stay now. So there's no kind of certainty over when a landlord might get their property back, and that means that there's no real incentive for them to let it out in the first place. So what we're going to see is many, many fewer rental properties available and much higher prices for them.
Now, this bill has been going through the Commons for a long, long time. Under a previous guise, it was put forward by the Conservatives. It's been changed in some ways, but perhaps not in too many fundamental ways under this government. Perhaps tightening the screws on the landlords a little bit. Do you get the sense that the people behind this bill realise just how extreme it is, just how much it will actually change the way that people are allowed to rent out their own properties?
I don't think there's been any kind of recognition about the severity of it. And I think in some ways the fact that it's gone unchallenged, starting in a Conservative government, continuing on through the Labour government, means that there's a lot of people who will ultimately bear the blame for what happens because of the bill.
And what do you think will happen because of the bill? How bad will things get?
Well, I mean, there's almost no incentive if you're a landlord to let your property out unless you know the person that you're letting it to. So for tenants who don't know any landlords, they're going to find it very hard to actually find a property to rent.
Well, they're also banning rental bidding wars, which means landlords and agents can't ask or accept offers above the listed price, so you have to stick with it. And also stricter property standards, so Harwood's law, which comes in to play for, I think it's not for rental properties right now, but it comes into play for other types of property. So there'll be lots of regulations that people need to stick to.
Yes, so if you ban accepting a higher price than the asking price, you're forcing landlords to choose not on price for who their tenants are, but on other factors. So I wouldn't be surprised if landlords ask for CVs, for example, or if they only let to people that they know. And all that hurts the people that the bill's trying to help, the unconnected to landlords, the worse off, the people with spotty rental records who, can't prove that they'd be good tenants.
I mean, we see this everywhere in the world where they institute rent controls. You get rent paid basically through other means. I mean, sometimes it's really nasty. Sometimes you get young people exploited by old people. Sometimes you have people forced to pay through lots of different means that are probably not reasonable to talk about on daytime television. I mean, this stuff can get horrible.
Listen, we'll have to leave it there on that bombshell. Ben Hopkins, thank you very much for joining us. Really good to talk to you. Yeah, the other thing is, if tenants want a pet, you as a landlord have to accept that. They have a right to ask for a pet, even if you don't want pets in the house that you own.
It's almost like you're just if you're renting away your house, it's no longer your house anymore.
It's not your house. It literally is not your house anymore, unless you plan to sell, in which case, if you do put it on the market, you can't re-let it within 12 months. Shocker.
Well, this is allegedly good afternoon Britain on GB News, but there's plenty more still to come.
Yes, including the asylum system failure. The Home Office has wasted billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, that's our money, on migrant hotels and other luxury perks for illegal migrants, all whilst the government contractors rake in hefty profits.
Well, now, if you want to get away from it all, perhaps you'd like to travel to a country with a functioning rental market. Well, here's the weather in Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Western parts of the Med are set to see some thundery showers over the next few days, but mostly fine further east. So on Tuesday, the Canaries look fine, but across Madeira and certainly parts of Portugal, some heavy outbreaks of rain developing at times. The central part of the Med not looking too bad, isolated showers, some fairly warm sunshine. Some warm sunshine in the east too, but also some thundery showers. And over the next few days, we hold on to thundery showers in the west, mostly fine though the further east you go.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Welcome. It's just coming up to 10 minutes to 1 o'clock. Now, Number 10 says in some breaking news that it expects deportation to happen imminently in the next few days. Sources say that Kibatu will be returned to his country of origin. Down the street says one person has been suspended whilst the investigation into the accidental release of Adesh Kibati takes place.
Well, just to repeat this breaking news, we've learned from Number 10 that it expects the deportation of Kibatu to happen imminently in the next few days. And those sources in Number 10 saying he'll be returned to his country of origin. That's Hadash Kibatu, who, of course, was convicted of sexual assault in Epping. He was a resident of the Bell Hotel in Epping, and his initial arrest was what started the enormous wave of migrant hotel protests we saw in recent months.
But what this does expose is the haphazard manner in which he was released by accident, which is something that you would imagine from a Benny Hill sketch, and the fact that he was then hovering around, actually trying to get back into the prison, even pointing out the error, which he clearly realised there was something wrong, to the guards or those who released him. And then, unfortunately, they pointed him to the train station in Chelmsford, where he got on a train, ended up in Stratford, and was just wandering around there asking people for directions, unsure. He was eventually, after 44 hours, I think it was, recaptured at Finsbury Park.
It's not like this guy was a genius evading the security services.
He really wasn't.
He was bumbling around in his prison tracksuit, and it took us 2 days to find the guy.
Well, the thing is, more than 2 days, well, kind of. But the other thing is that it is clear from what I saw that he had no idea what he was doing or where he was going. And initially, when the reports came out, they were saying he speaks very good English, he's probably aware of what's happening. And to me, it initially felt as though they wanted to make it appear as though he knew what was going on and there was some sort of deliberation in what he was doing.
This is some guy who is clearly not fit to be in this country, clearly would not pass any even low bar of points-based migration system.
Fleeing persecution.
So he got on a small boat, because that's the only way, that's the way to jump the queue without needing any qualifications or any cognitive ability whatsoever. And then he ends up in this country, completely alien to all of our norms and cultures, ends up sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl, I mean, arguably, because he didn't know any better. I don't think this is a criminal mastermind. I think this is a deeply stupid man who does not belong in this country in any way, shape or form because he simply cannot understand our rules or culture.
Well, I think perhaps where he is from, perhaps you can get away with that and there'll be no comeback on you. Perhaps that's why he thought that it was OK to do that here. But it does highlight the fact that many, and I suspect it's a large proportion of those on small boats, could easily go back to the place that they have come from initially, and they are not fleeing persecution, as this migrant has proved, because even when he was sentenced, he then asked to be sent straight back. So, I mean, that just gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here in this country, and we're paying an absolute fortune for it. The government really needs to get a handle on it.
But just to remind you of that breaking news, imminently he will be deported. The government says in the next few days. Do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain, where we will try and find out what the next few days actually means in government speak.
Yeah, so lots more coming up on today's show. Stay tuned, do not go anywhere. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. There will be some bright weather out there today, even some sunshine in places, but also further blustery showers at first before more prolonged rain turns up later on. As one low departs to the east, another low turns up to the west. In between, northerly winds, feeling cool and bright spells along with showers. The showers most frequent across north and northeast Scotland. There'll also be a few showers continuing through the Midlands and eastern England, but the showers tend to fade into the afternoon as the next system approaches, that bringing some damp weather to Northern Ireland by the middle of the afternoon. All in all, it's going to continue to feel cold, but perhaps not as cold as it felt in places during the weekend. The wind's easing for a time as the next low starts to move in, and clear spells across much of Scotland later in the afternoon going into the evening. Showers tending to ease at this stage, but still continuing around coastal parts of northern Scotland. Here's the wet weather moving into western Scotland, northwest England, West Wales, and just clearing Northern Ireland during the evening. Increasingly damp across Wales and the southwest, but the rain tending to be light and patchy in many places. Then cloudy for many overnight, with those outbreaks of rain spilling eastwards. The rain heaviest and most persistent across northern and northwestern parts of the UK before clearing later, followed by further showers. So a changeable night to come. Rain for many places, but not wet all night. And in between, there will be some clear spells later on. Temperatures around the high single figures as we start off Tuesday. But Tuesday is a bright start across this central swathe of the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, the Midlands, eastern England. Either side of that, we will see further showers. The showers most lively across western Scotland into central areas, and for the south of England as well, there'll be some prolonged showers in places. Continuing to feel cool, but not as cool as recent days.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps four, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
You know, it was so unexpected. What we needed was somebody to sit with us and talk about how we were going to feel. Yes, everyone experiences grief differently. Everyone feels very differently after they've lost their child. But there are some real common things that run through it. And one of them is guilt. Could I have prevented this happening to my child? I'm here to protect them and I didn't protect him. And that was some of the things that Paul did say to me that weekend was he felt he'd failed us. He felt he'd let George down. He'd failed me as his wife. The most awful things to say. And of course I reassured him. But what we needed was somebody who, you know, had some experience of working with families who'd experienced such loss. Someone to sit with us. And that's what Tawish does. That's the one thing that I was so passionate about, was making sure that we work with hospitals, the police, because there's obviously a heavy police influence as well. Somebody who will get that referral. The family then can sit with our workers and just talk.
And Rhiannon, Tawish is now part of Prince William's new National Suicide Prevention Network, which is launched. Around 20 organisations, I believe, around the country. Can you just explain how the charity and yourself got involved and how that led to Prince William literally sitting in your kitchen and you having a chat with him?
I've just worked with the Royal Foundation, so I'm honestly overwhelmed that they want us to be part of this very important network. So it's bringing the 4 nations together, which again is a unique piece of work where people can talk, find out why is this happening to our loved ones? What can we do to support these people? Let's bring people together. Let's talk about it. And more importantly, let's talk about suicide.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of October. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Number 10 says it expects Hadush Kabatu to be deported imminently in the next few days. Sources say that he will be returned to his country of origin.
That's right, but no further details, no running commentary from 10 Downing Street. But later on, David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, will set out the plans of an investigation into what went wrong on Friday.
Well, it's an asylum system failure. The Home Office has wasted billions of pounds on taxpayers' money on migrant hotels and other luxury perks for illegal migrants, all while government contractors rake in hefty profits.
And of course, the asylum seeker hotel debacle is just a consequence of a failure to get to grip of the thousands who continue to cross the English Channel.
Looking for investment, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves jets off to Saudi Arabia for investment talks with that oil-rich nation after Labour blasted the Tories for cozying up to the same regime only a few years ago.
And while Reeves is in the Middle East begging for oil money, here at home we continue to reject it. More than 2,000 Scotland-based jobs are at risk as oil and energy services group Petrofac has now applied for administration.
Argentina's maverick libertarian President Javier Milei has led his party to a landslide victory in yesterday's midterm elections. Now, this is a significant win for the radical right-winger after defining the first 2 years of his presidency with chainsaw-inspired spending cuts and free market reforms.
Now here's something Rachel Reeves could do.
Get a chainsaw?
Instead of trying to raise everyone's taxes, she could get out her chainsaw, rev it up a little bit, and do some Argentina-inspired spending cuts.
Yes, have your Malayan. She could have a Malayan. Frankly, I just don't see why, if you see something like that working, why they wouldn't consider applying it to this economy, because he slashed his civil service, which I believe needs to happen. And I mean, look at what happened with the prisons. These people all working for the government, there's probably loads of them all doing all the paperwork in the back offices and working out what should happen when people leave prison. And what happens? Well, people leave prison and then just disappear.
It's interesting because a lot of critics of Javier Milei said his plan had started to come undone in September because the Argentinian peso fell, there was jitters in the stock market. But this was all because there was a local election in Buenos Aires where the Peronists, the sort of left-wing opposition, did much better than expected. And off the back of that, the market started to think, oh, can we trust this? But that wasn't because Javier Milei was faltering. That's because they were thinking maybe his reform agenda would be stopped. So if you're to take the market jitters, if they think that Milei will be fettered by his opposition, well, now that he's won big and squeezed out the opposition by more than was expected, well, you'd expect the reverse to happen. You'd expect greater confidence in the Argentine economy.
Well, maybe didn't Liz Truss sort of try something a little bit like that, but it didn't quite go her way?
Well, the problem with Liz Truss, yes, she cut taxes, but she raised spending. If she'd have cut spending at the same time, then creditors to this country, it wouldn't have mattered so much. I mean, people only get jittery about lending people money if they don't think you can pay it back.
Or if you lend them money, then they go and spend even more. What do you think? GBNews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 minutes past 1. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. And some breaking news this lunchtime. Downing Street say that they expect Hadush Kabatu, the migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released from prison, to be deported imminently. Sources say that he will be deported to his country of origin. Number 10 also added that one person has been suspended while the investigation into the release of Kabatu takes place. Prisons are expected to begin enhanced checks following the release from HMP Chelmsford. Kabatu was jailed for 12 months in September for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. Justice Secretary David Lammy will face questions in Parliament today on prison procedures. Well, Housing Secretary Steve Reid told GB News Breakfast that David Lammy will announce those measures on prison security later today.
We know we've got a broken justice system. I hear what you say the Conservatives have said, but they broke the criminal justice system. Remember, they ran out of prison places, so there was nowhere to put people that got a custodial sentence. They sacked a third of the people working in that service. And when you break a system, then problems happen like the one we've seen. Yes, catastrophic. So David Lammy will be answering questions in the Commons behind me today, and he will be announcing the new checks that would be put in place to make sure this kind of thing cannot happen again. It's unacceptable. It shouldn't have happened then. We need to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
The Home Office has squandered billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on asylum accommodation, according to a report. The Home Affairs Committee has told the government to get a grip on the UK's asylum accommodation system, labelling it as failed, chaotic and expensive. The committee also warned that without a clear plan, Sir Keir Starmer's government risks under-delivery and consequently undermining public trust still further. The Home Office say that the government is furious about the number of illegal migrants in this country and in hotels, promising to close every single asylum hotel. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith told GB News Breakfast that the cost of the asylum hotel system is completely unacceptable.
It's a disgusting waste of money. If people haven't been even collecting overpayments, that's maladministration. Heads should roll. Permanent secretary heads should roll. It's completely unacceptable. And, you know, there's been plenty of reports that say the Home Office is not fit for purpose. This is yet another example.
Elsewhere, more than 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scotland as oil and gas company Petrofac enters administration. The Aberdeen-based firm, which operates in North Sea oil, was plunged into difficulty last week when a major contract was cancelled. In a statement today, Petrofac said that the group's operations will continue to trade and options for restructuring of the company, including a possible merger or acquisition, are being explored. The news comes as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is in Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth ahead of the budget on the 26th of November. The Chancellor is aiming to make progress on a trade deal with the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh. Here at home, new figures show investment in machinery from Britain's manufacturers has dropped from a 10-year high, with factory bosses warning that their businesses are hitting a critical juncture. Hurricane Melissa is expected to make landfall later today in Jamaica, with the government there ordering mass evacuations for large parts of the country. Authorities have now upgraded the hurricane to a Category 5 storm, bringing life-threatening flash flooding and landslides with winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Melissa is the 13th hurricane in this year's Atlantic season, which typically ends in November. And US President Donald Trump has met with Japan's Emperor Naruhito this morning as part of a tour around Asia. He was greeted by the Emperor at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. President Trump will later head to South Korea before meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two countries have reportedly agreed the framework of a trade deal ahead of that meeting. Those are your latest GBNews headlines, so let's get a quick look at the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3346 and €1.1460. The price of gold is £3,031.69 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 9,650 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, number 10 says it expects the deportation to happen imminently in the next few days. That doesn't feel so imminent. Sources say that he'll be returned to his country of origin. And Downing Street says that one person has been suspended whilst the investigation into the accidental release of Hadush Kobatu takes place.
Well, let's get the lowdown now with our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson in number 10 Downing Street. Chris, the government suggesting that this deportation will happen within days. Do we have anything more specific than that?
That's all we have in the next few days, Tom and Nana, and imminently. We understand from sources he will be returned to his country of origin, which is Ethiopia. That cannot happen soon enough. We think the idea had been last Friday morning when he's released at 10:25 a.m. from Chelmsford Prison to go almost directly or over the weekend to this flight to Ethiopia. That never happened, of course, because this individual was told to go get onto a train and go somewhere, and he did try, of course, to go back into prison a few times. It's a complete cock-up. We'll be hearing later from David Lammy, who is now the Justice Secretary. He is speaking to MPs. We expect around 4 or 5 o'clock. He'll then talk to the Parliamentary Labour Party as a deputy leader alongside the new elected deputy leader of the party, of course, Lucy Powell. So this government, with its own MPs, is trying to restore its authority in how it's running things after, frankly, a week of chaos when it's felt that the country's barely being governed by this apparently passenger government.
There'll be an inquiry into this, because David Lammy said that he was livid about this, and one person is apparently being suspended. Do we know more about who was suspended or what level that person was at?
No, we don't. We may hear more when we hear David Lammy address MPs later. We're told this by number 10. We need to know what happened here. This is symptomatic of a system under too much strain. We have a prison crisis, the government says, that demands early releases. Of course, they're blaming the early releases last September on the full to breaking point prison system they inherited from the Tory government. It's a system, they say, working under extreme pressure. There'll be no overnight fix. They admit admit that 262 people were released in error in the year to March. A lot of that, the majority of that time, of course, under Labour government. But they do say that there were 800 mistaken releases under the last government, but they won't give a timescale for that. It's a prison system which is struggling, they say. We'll hear more later. We are expecting David Lammy to announce who will carry out this investigation, but frankly, it can't come soon enough. I think the faith in this government to keep us safe was severely damaged by that release on last Friday morning. Of course, it was sort of dealt with at around 8:30 yesterday morning. But how this happened and why it must never happen again is front and foremost of the government's mind this hour.
Absolutely. Utter shambles, isn't it? Imagine if. Thank you very much, Christopher Hope. Imagine if would they have been so vocal if people like GB News would have found this out and had not reported this? I wonder whether, because of all these other releases of other people who've gone in the wrong direction or been released by accident, we never really got to hear about it. And this such high-profile individual being released by accident has opened a can of worms, and now we can see clearly that this isn't just an isolated incident.
Yeah, it does make you wonder how many accidental releases are there every day across this country.
And what they've done as well. I mean, he sexual assault, but what about other criminals?
Well, one man who might know is Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Mark, just initially your reaction to the government saying that Kibatu will now be deported within days. They use the word imminently. Is this likely to take place?
I think there's no doubt it will take place very soon, because you had Hadush Kibatu, when I was actually in Chelmsford Magistrates Court for his sentencing, his lawyer said he wanted to go back to Ethiopia. He was fed up with the whole situation. He didn't realise, apparently, that our laws were so strict that they didn't allow for the sexual assault of those under the age of 18. But there you go. That was part of his supposed mitigation against his sentence, but he said he would willingly go back to Ethiopia. So apparently there's no roadblock in terms of any legal appeals against it. They just need to get the flights up and running and for the officials in Addis Ababa to accept him. So assuming that is all going to go ahead fairly smoothly, then the next day or two he's likely to be on that flight and out of here. Interestingly, the government's saying that they're not going to provide a running commentary on this. You know, when it suits them, any other time, they're more than happy to give us a running commentary on all manner of things. But this particular issue, which means so much to people right across the country who are very concerned about the accidental release of this individual and the fact he was clearly at large for 2 days before then being recaptured. That is an issue that many people are very concerned about. They would like a running commentary. We don't even know at this stage whether he has been transferred back from police custody to prison service custody or whether he's gone directly to an immigration removal centre. It's a kind of detail that's kind of useful at this stage.
This is, I suppose, one of the most difficult things for the government to contend with, because ultimately the government will always claim that this is a system that was set up by the previous government, that contracts were signed under the previous government, that they're dealing with the mess of the previous government. And yet this government has been in office for more than a year. They said that they were fixing the foundations, that they were going to smash the gangs, that they were going to sort from root and branch every level of this, and yet we just seem to be lurching from crisis to crisis, whether it's the number of people coming across in small boats, or indeed when they're here, what they do, how they're put up, and whether or not they're accidentally released from prison. I mean, at what point does the government actually take some responsibility, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so long you can, in office, continue to blame the previous government. There comes a time when you have to accept you're in office now, you've been in office long enough, you've got to grip the various crises. In terms of the prison service, look, we know that there has been big issues in terms of prison overcrowding, a lack of staff, and that was true under the previous government, and especially in the austerity years when lots of prison officers were laid off in that time. They've been trying to an extent to build back prison officer numbers, but not to where they were before. And of course there are many more people in prison now. And it was this government actually that introduced some changes, allowing those prisoners to be released 40% of their sentence having been served, as opposed to 50% of their sentence having been served. That wasn't the previous government, that was this government. That added to the caseload of these prison officers who are already dealing with a massive churn in the prisons in terms of prisoners coming in and out. Anyway, I mean, what are we to make of the fact that 262 people were mistakenly released last year in the year to March? Now, are we to assume that all of these prison officers were incompetent and made gross mistakes, or does it actually point to something more systemic in terms of the absolute mess that these prisons are in at the moment, and the way in which the prison staff there are completely overwhelmed?
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. If you just tuned in, this is coming up to 18 minutes after 1 o'clock. We're now joined by Paul Collar, who's a Liberal Democrat MP for Wimbledon. Paul, welcome to the programme. Paul, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this complete shambles that we are witnessing at the moment in terms of
well,
the prison?
your correspondent said it all. You know, the Labour government inherited a shambles, and I'm afraid they haven't got a grip. They've had 16 months to do so, and they haven't done so.
What would the Liberal Democrats do differently? I mean, forgive me if this is slightly presumptuous, but generally the Liberal Democrats are seen as being perhaps softer on issues of crime, law, order, asylum.
I don't think that's at all true. I think it's a fair question. We need to simply speed up the processing of undocumented migrants. We're calling for Nightingale processing centres, recruiting 4,000 people to actually make these assessments quickly. There's been a failure to do so, and that's costing us vast amounts of money. And you would pay for those Nightingale centres by simply cutting the costs we're paying on asylum hotels, which is estimated to be £15 billion. It's an obscene amount.
In your sort of world, then, if you did that, would the migrants be detained and have to stay within those, or would you allow them to roam freely as this and previous governments are allowing?
The issue is not whether they roam freely or not. The issue is whether or not they're processed quickly. We would want them processed quickly, and those that do not pass the test to be deported quickly. That's what we need.
But it is partly, isn't it? Because this particular migrant, because he was able to roam freely, was then convicted of sexual assault. So, and the people in Epping were rightly very upset because obviously we don't know who is coming in, and then they're allowed to roam free until their claim is processed. So even if it took 1 week, 3 days or however long, in your world, would these people be detained properly in secure accommodation?
I don't think it's sensible to imprison people fleeing from torture, from warfare, from violence. I don't think it's right as a default position to imprison them. But I think one does need a sensible approach to it, which is swiftly processing them.
Do you accept the criticism, and perhaps this is why we've got into the mess that we've got into, subsequent governments not wanting to process too quickly, because ultimately all of the treaties we're signed up, dating back to the 1951 Convention and onwards, mean that actually most people around the world, if they come from most countries that are economically underdeveloped, that have perhaps less democracy, worse LGBT legislation, little to no women's rights, I mean, that is millions upon millions. It's probably hundreds of millions of people that under the various treaties we're signed up to, if they can simply make it to Britain, would have every right under those treaties to claim asylum and would likely be granted asylum. The concern for previous governments has been that perhaps too many people would be granted asylum if there was quick processing.
Let's think this through. You know, remember, under the Dublin Accords, when we were in the EU, people had to claim asylum in the first port of entry in the EU. That's why this is a post-Brexit problem.
Hang on, Paul. How many people were sent away under the Dublin Accords?
Sorry?
How many people were returned to Europe under the Dublin in the final year of the Dublin Accords?
This is the lie. The point is there was very little incentive to come here then because of the Dublin Accord.
But we had more people arriving under the Dublin Accords than we had leaving.
No. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. The reason why we didn't return many under the Dublin Accords was we didn't need to, because we didn't have such a problem. You must have realised the undocumented migrants problem has arisen since Brexit.
That's not true, Paul. Yes, the small boats problem rose significantly after Brexit, but you and I remember both the huge problems that we had with lorries. Lorries in the late 2000s, tens of thousands of lorries. But the thing is, they're less visible. You can't count them. They're inside the lorries.
Please look at the figures. Please look at the figures. We weren't talking about tens of thousands of migrants, undocumented migrants. That has come post-Brexit. You cannot duck that point.
But Paul, OK, that's great, but we've had Brexit, all right? So we are where we are. So what would the Liberal Democrats do then in terms of this?
Well, I've said we must process more quickly.
How? Because the Home Office are doing the job.
Via Nightingale processing centres, which we funded by saving the money on hotels.
Yeah, but the Home Office are in charge of all of that, and they're unfit for purpose. So you'd still have the same Home Office that you'd be dealing with.
Well, our Select Committee report has indeed been very critical of the leadership in the Home Office. I agree with you, but that's where we need to start. We need to actually get a grip, and that requires political leadership. Remember, the Tories, with the Rwanda scheme, let this fester, and the Labour have not taken control of it. Now, much as I'd like to take responsibility for my Tory and Labour colleagues, I don't think I can.
Just before we let you go, Paul, do you worry that this will be a pull factor? If you're granting tens of thousands of people asylum under your Nightingale asylum scheme, that's granting people asylum who came across illegally by small boat. Wouldn't that just encourage more people to do that?
The Nightingale scheme is to process people. It's not to all grant everyone permission to stay. It's to process them on the law.
Looking at historically, a majority of them will be granted asylum.
And then, anyway, well, listen, we've got to go, Paul, but we will watch to see what you vote for then whilst you're there, and whether you do sort of go along with the Labour Party or whether you vote for stricter controls. Paul Collar, thank you very much.
He's a Liberal Democrat
MP for Wimbledon. Thank you.
No, interesting stuff. I think a lot of people are seeing just the scale of crisis, and we're seeing lots of different proposals from lots of different parties now. It's interesting.
Realistic Rwanda would have worked. But listen, the Home Office said the government is furious about the number of illegal migrants in this country and in hotels. This is why we will close every single asylum hotel, saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. We have already taken action closing hotels, slashing asylum costs by nearly £1 billion and exploring the use of military bases and disused properties.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more still to come.
Yes, including Argentina's maverick Libertarian President Javier Milei, who has led his party to a landslide victory in yesterday's midterm elections. But after the break...
Looking for investment, the Chancellor jets off to Saudi Arabia, hoping to get some of that lovely, greasy oil money. But is she cozying up to the same regime that she criticised just a few years ago?
All of that and more. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Number 10 says it expects Epping sex offender Hadush Gabatu to be deported imminently, not immediately. That's in the next few days.
Well, meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is leading a British delegation to Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth with less than a month to go before the budget.
Right, well, joining us now is Labour MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Danny Beales. Danny, welcome to the programme. Danny, before we get stuck into what the Chancellor is up to, can we start with Hadush Gabatu? Now, he was accidentally released from prison, which is frightening that would be happening. What David Lammy says he's livid, but will the Labour Party take some responsibility for what has happened?
Well, I mean, it's a terrible incident. I think our thoughts have to go out to the family. It must be a terribly distressing time to see this happen. After everything they've gone through, I think the Justice Secretary is right in his condemnation of the events, in ordering an immediate investigation into how this ever happened, and to ensure that changes are made to procedures so this doesn't happen again. And I think he's right to pursue no stone unturned to find out exactly how this happened, why this happened, who was involved, and to hold them accountable. I understand someone's already been suspended pending that full investigation. And it's, thanks to the swift action of the emergency services, he's now back in detention and will be removed from the country, and rightly so.
They accept some sort of responsibility for this because it's under their watch, or will it be sort of the blame of the previous administration for the mess that we're in?
Well, no, it's a full investigation into exactly how this has happened. Clearly, mistakes were made and they need to be learnt from. I think what the public want to know is that the right changes to procedures are put in place so this doesn't happen, that we can assure the public that justice is always done, that people are removed from this country where they need to be removed. This didn't happen in this incident. It's a terrible, terrible incident. This person was in prison, was due to be removed from the country, and a mistake was made in procedures, which is not acceptable. But thanks to the swift work of the emergency services, thanks to the public who've remained incredibly vigilant and shared information, he's now been re-detained and is being deported.
So that's a no. All right, cool.
So whilst we're yet to see Gabatu get on his plane, someone who has been on an aeroplane is, of course, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. She's over in Saudi Arabia today trying to drum up investment. And I suppose the concern here is that Saudi Arabia is not exactly a beacon for human rights around the world. It's not an easy place to be if you're gay or if you're a woman. Frankly, if you're not in favour of the government either. It's a pretty nasty place to be if you're a journalist.
Or the death penalty, yeah, not in favour of that.
And the issue is that in opposition, the Labour Party would say all of these things. But now in government, it seems that the financial situation is so perilous that we're going cap in hand to a regime that the Labour Party used to be able to call out.
Well, I wouldn't share that assessment. The UK has got the fastest growth in the G7, which is the largest economies.
No, we don't.
Which is positive.
We don't have the fastest growth in the G7. It's slower than the United States.
We've had the fastest growth in the G7 over the last period. Obviously, we want the economy to grow more.
Danny, I'm afraid you're wrong on that.
We want people to feel that growth in their pockets, and the cost of living crisis is not over. But I think it's right.
Which year did we have the fastest growth in the G7, Danny?
This year, we've had the fastest growth in the G7. Okay.
Oh, amongst
with the figures I've seen, we've had the fastest or the second fastest growth at different periods of time.
It's ahead of Germany and France and Italy, yes, but they're in Europe. So,
but back to your question about trade deals, I think it's right that the UK seeks to have positive trade deals that benefit people in this country. We've signed the landmark US trade deal, India trade deal, a better trade deal with the EU, and it's right we look at other partners in which we have trading arrangements already to build better trading arrangements so they benefit people in this country. I think you can do both things. I think you can work with countries on trade and on investment, and also raise concerns about things like human rights. I don't think it's either or.
Danny, can I ask you about some of the tax rises? So, for example, the national insurance on employers. Do you think that was a wise move, given the direction of travel? People aren't hiring now, businesses are not growing, production is falling because people don't want to invest in new employees.
I support the Employment Rights Bill. I think there's practical measures in there which improve workers' rights, long overdue. I think, I don't think that's a case of damaging business. I think having stability, being able to retain good staff, encourage people to join your firm is all good for business. I think lots of employers support this. I think the Co-op, Mace, which is one of the largest construction firms, have been very positive about the Employment Rights Bill and the provisions there. And I think as well as supporting improvements to employment rights, the government's also looking to lower regulation on business, support the construction sector to get moving again, lots of pro-business policies as well as pro-employment policies.
Can you name a company that's not affiliated with the Labour Party that supports the Employment Rights Bill?
I'm not aware of Mace Construction being affiliated with the Labour Party personally. I think they're one of the largest construction firms in the country. I understand they're very positive about the Employment Rights Bill, but whether it's, putting into place the Employment Rights Bill, which was in our manifesto.
Got one company.
I said Mace Construction, which I don't believe is...
Yeah, just the one company. I mean, I don't know how many companies there are across the economy, but I mean, I think we can both agree that that the majority are thinking this is going to be a big concern for them.
And plus an NI hike as well, so that's a problem too.
Yeah, so I think around half of businesses don't pay any increase in NI, but the larger half of businesses have since the last budget. I think with the Chancellor of the Labour Party, the government understand the concerns. It's always difficult paying more tax, but in coming into government, we were clear that we had to deliver better public services is what people want. They want an NHS that works. They want roads repaired, railways invested in. We can't get a productive economy if people can't get treated and they're on waiting lists. If people can't get to work effectively, businesses need that investment too, and that has to be paid for. It's very clear that the Conservatives and Reform don't support the last budget, but they haven't said where that money would come from. So if they're not able to do that, their sums don't add up. Or they wouldn't be investing $29 billion in the NHS. They wouldn't be bringing down waiting lists.
All right, Danny Beales, thank you very much for talking to us. That is Danny Beales, who's the Labour MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip.
A lot there, interesting stuff. Well, we'll see what the Chancellor does, of course, at the end of next month. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more still to come.
Yes, so whilst Rachel Reeves is in the Middle East begging for oil money, here at home we continue to reject it. More than 2,000 Scotland-based jobs are at risk as oil and energy services group Petrofac have applied for administration.
Well, all of that and much more to come. Here are your latest headlines.
Good afternoon. The headlines at 1:35 and some breaking news this lunchtime. Downing Street say that they expect Hadush Kabatu, the migrant sex offender who was mistakenly released from prison, to be deported imminently. Number 10 also added that one person has been suspended while the investigation into the release of Kabatu takes place. Prisons are set to begin enhanced checks shortly. Steve Reed spoke to GB News Breakfast.
David Lammy will be answering questions in the Commons behind me today, and he will be announcing the new checks that would be put in place to make sure this kind of thing cannot happen again.
The Home Office has squandered billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on asylum accommodation, according to a report. The Home Affairs Committee has told the government to get a grip on the UK's asylum accommodation system, labelling it as failed, chaotic and expensive. More than 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scotland as oil and gas company Petrofac enters administration. The Aberdeen-based firm, which operates in North Sea oil, was plunged into difficulty last week when a major contract was cancelled. The news comes as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is in Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth ahead of the budget on the 26th of November. And Hurricane Melissa is expected to make landfall later today in Jamaica, with the government ordering mass evacuations for large parts of the country. Authorities have now upgraded the hurricane to a Category 5 storm, bringing life-threatening flash flooding and landslides with winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Well, lots more still to come on today's show. This is indeed Good Afternoon Britain.
Yes, Topaz Andy Prince Andrew would leave Royal Lodge, but only if he and his ex-wife are each given a new house in Windsor.
Well, all of that and indeed much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. There will be some bright weather out there today, even some sunshine in places, but also further blustery showers at first before more prolonged rain turns up later on. As one low departs to the east, another low turns up to the west. In between, northerly winds, feeling cool and bright spells along with showers. The showers most frequent across north and northeast Scotland. There'll also be a few showers continuing through the Midlands and eastern England, but the showers tend to fade into the afternoon as the next system approaches, that bringing some damp weather to Northern Ireland by the middle of the afternoon. All in all, it's going to continue to feel cold, but perhaps not as cold as it felt in places during the weekend. The wind's easing for a time as the next low starts to move in, and clear spells across much of Scotland later in the afternoon going into the evening. Showers tending to ease at this stage, but still continuing around coastal parts of northern Scotland. Here's the wet weather moving into western Scotland, northwest England, West Wales, and just clearing Northern Ireland during the evening. Increasingly damp across Wales and the southwest, but the rain tending to be light and patchy in many places. Then cloudy for many overnight, with those outbreaks of rain spilling eastwards. The rain heaviest and most persistent across northern and northwestern parts of the UK before clearing later, followed by further showers. So a changeable night to come. Rain for many places, but not wet all night. And in between, there will be some clear spells later on. Temperatures around the high single figures as we start off Tuesday. Tuesday is a bright start across this central swathe of the UK, Northern Ireland, Wales, the Midlands, eastern England. Either side of that, we will see further showers. The showers most lively across western Scotland into central areas, and for the south of England as well, there'll be some prolonged showers in places. Continuing to feel cool, but not as cool as recent days.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Road users face disruptions on the A9 at Inveralmond roundabout due to a broken down vehicle. The M48 has a weight restriction over 7.5 tonnes indefinitely. The M6 southbound in Lancashire between junctions 29 and 28 has 50-minute delays. In Devon, an M5 incident causes delays between junctions 28 and 29, with one lane closed. West Sussex's A27 westbound between A285 and A259 faces 15-minute delays. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and London North Western Railway are delayed between Milton Keynes Central and Northampton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. 41 minutes after 1 o'clock. Now, more than 2,000 jobs could be at risk in Scotland after oil and gas company Petrofac went into administration.
Well, the Aberdeen-based firm, which operates in North Sea oil, was plunged into difficulty last week when a major contract was cancelled.
Now, that news comes as Chancellor Rachel Reeves is in Saudi Arabia today as she focuses on economic growth ahead of the budget on the 26th of November.
Well, we're joined by the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie, himself an Aberdeenshire MP. Andrew, this is a damning indictment of the UK energy policy, I would put to you, not just over the last 16 months, but the last 15 years.
Well, I wouldn't quite go as far as that, Tom. I think what we've seen since the Labour Party has got into power is a complete abandonment of one of our greatest national assets, and that's our North Sea oil and gas industry. The raising of the windfall tax to 78%, the removal of investment allowances, the banning of licensing and exploration from new oil and gas, all at the same time whilst we're importing more of the gas that we need from Norway, is perverse and falls squarely at the door of Ed Miliband, who's created this hostile environment for trading in the North Sea. Now, Petrofac as a company that's not had its troubles to seek over the last few years, but it's quite clear that this government's policies and its determination to wipe out our fossil fuel industry has been the straw that has broken the camel's back. Now, look, I was one of the few MPs to speak out against the imposition of a windfall tax to begin with when we introduced it in government and again extended it. But the extension and the increase that we've seen under this government, the complete hostility that they have to this industry and the complete abandonment of that industry's workers, high-skilled, high-wage individuals contributing so much to our energy security and indeed our economy here, purely falls at the door of Ed Miliband and this Labour Party.
You must stick in your craw that Rachel Reeves is actually now in Saudi Arabia, an oil-rich company, now begging for more investment.
Yeah, completely. It's totally ironic. I doubt they'll see the irony. They'll be blind to it, of course, begging for investment from a country that's got rich on the back of, as they would describe it, petrodollars, and is increasing its exploration, increasing its export of oil and gas, all at the same time as we're taking action to kill off that once successful industry here in the United Kingdom. You know, we're going to see a lot more Scots working in the global oil and gas industry in Riyadh, in the UAE, in Australia, in the Far East, and indeed anywhere in the world that Ed Miliband isn't in charge of energy policy, purely as a result of the fact they won't have jobs here in the UK, and that's perverse. It's nonsensical, especially at a time when we know, whatever your view on net zero and however you think we should be getting our energy, we're going to need gas, at least for the 20 to 30 years. So why don't we get it out of our own waters, employing British workers and generating revenue for the British Exchequer? It's absolutely unhinged.
But
it is astonishing.
He said that there would be green jobs, though. Ed Miliband has talked about thousands of green jobs. Are you buying into that?
Now, where are they? Right, I mean, we've been promised tens of thousands of jobs in renewables for the past few decades. We've got the second highest amount of renewables on the grid of any country in Europe, with little in the way of jobs to show for that, nor, by the way, in terms of reductions to our energy bills, which we were also promised as a result of this investment in renewables. Look, there is a future for renewables sitting alongside oil and gas. These companies that we're speaking about aren't exclusively invested in oil and gas or renewables. They're invested in all of the above. But to enable them to make the investment and to make the transition to a cleaner future, if they so choose, they're going to need a profitable oil and gas base underneath them so that they have that capital to invest. Right now, this Labour government has hung up the closed for business sign above the North Sea. So we're seeing investment walking away, we're seeing projects paused, we're seeing skills lost, and we're seeing companies closed down to the extent that we're seeing thousands of jobs lost, not just in Aberdeen and the North East, where I'm privileged to represent, but actually right around the United Kingdom, because there isn't a constituency in this country that doesn't have some oil and gas footprint in it. So this could be hugely damaging for our overall economy. And for a government that apparently is so focused on growth above everything else, as I said, this seems perverse.
OK, Andrew Bowie, Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland. Thanks indeed for joining us. I know you feel passionately about this being your patch, but thanks for joining us.
All right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, the Reform Party are holding a mystery press conference with Nigel Farage. Well, do stay with us. In around 15 minutes' time, we should be able to see what on earth that's about. But after the break...
Argentina's maverick Libertarian President Javier Milei has led his party to a landslide victory in yesterday's midterm elections.
But if you don't want to travel quite as far as Argentina to find some sunshine, here's the weather in Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Western parts of the Med are set to see some thundery showers over the next few days, but mostly fine further east. So on Tuesday, the Canaries look fine, but across Madeira and certainly parts of Portugal, some heavy outbreaks of rain developing at times. The central part of the Med not looking too bad, isolated showers, some fairly warm sunshine. Some warm sunshine in the east too, but also some thundery showers. And over the next few days, we hold on to thundery showers in the west, mostly fine though the further east you go.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I think solo travel can be really enriching. I think it helps build so many different skills. You have to problem solve, navigate different social interactions. It can be great for building confidence, mental health, resilience, and the interactions you have with people tend to be richer when you're traveling on your own. So I'm all for it. I think it can really help reset the mind and give you that confidence boost for sure.
70% of solo travellers are women. Why do you think that is?
I think in general, post-pandemic, we have seen people prioritising travel. I think because it was taken away from us and restricted for quite a long time, we've seen this general overall trend that people are prioritising travel, spending more on travel. And I think women in particular, in general, we do tend to get pulled in so many different directions. If you're a working mother and a partner, our lives are so hectic, and solo travel, I guess for women, just gives them a chance to have a little bit of a breather, have a little bit of an escape, recharge, and hopefully come back after their trip, you know, in a healthier, more refreshed mindset.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 10 minutes to 2, we're just going to show you some of the latest pictures from Turkey. Why? Well, our Prime Minister is there. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer is earlier today in Ankara, meeting President Erdogan, who of course has been leading Turkey for many years now.
They haven't given us much detail as to the full reasons of his trip. Perhaps he's going to get his teeth done as well whilst he's there.
Yeah, a bit of a hair transplant, few extra teeth. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure much more serious things are going on in the presidential palace there.
It could be talks on, I don't know, immigration potentially. A lot of people coming through Turkey.
It is behind closed doors, but we'll bring you more on this as soon soon as we get it, but just the very latest pictures there from Ankara, the Prime Minister arriving for talks with the Turkish President.
Right, now though, Argentinian President Javier Milei has led his party to a landslide victory in the midterm elections, and he celebrated in style.
Yes, Milei's party La Libertad Avanza won 41% of the vote and doubled his party's number of MPs. The Argentinians gave their stamp of approval for Milei's mix of radical austerity, or rather tax cuts, and indeed spending cuts and free market reforms.
It's Javier Milei. Well, we're joined now by Mani Bashrazad. Have I said that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much. He's a research associate at the Institute of Economic Affairs. So what is it that Javier Milei has done, and how has he done it? What has been so successful and why?
Let's not just forget, over a year ago, 100 so-called top economists signed a letter to Guardian, and then they said, we are so worried about Javier Milei's policies. It's going to be miserable and it's going to be, quote, potentially harmful to Argentinian people. What has happened in this year? Niall Ferguson calls it a man-made miracle. Why? Milei ended Argentina's fiscal deficit for the first time in 123 years. The inflation was, when he got into office, 211% in 2023. Now it's 43%. The other number is, some may call it, that Milei's policies is going to make the rich richer and make the poor poorer. Okay, let's look at UNICEF numbers. More than 1.7 million children are now out of poverty because of Javier Milei's policy. And according to EMAE, the economy grew by 8% year to year in April. What did Milei show to us is that free market policies work. He showed to us one very important lesson. Inflation isn't an act of God. Debt is an act of God. It's a policy of choice. Inflation is a choice, low growth is a choice, and we can change our decisions.
When governments spend too much money, borrow too much money, there's too much money circulating around, chasing too few goods, those goods shoot up in price. Inflation. But lots of people didn't see this coming. Lots of people thought that he was going to stumble at this election. This was a big, big surprise for even internal election observers. He outperformed the polls. I mean, people were thinking he might get 30%, and he got 41%.
It was shocking for me personally, because in Buenos Aires election that happened like a couple of months ago, the signal was Milei is not going to be popular. But let's not forget, Buenos Aires is like London, it's like New York.
This was important, though, because those local elections in Buenos Aires, where Milei's party went backwards, that caused some big problems in the stock market and with the value of the peso.
Two things we can understand from that. The first thing is Buenos Aires voters are like London voters or like New York voters, where Zohran Mamdani is popular. The second thing we can understand is the population, the whole country understood, if Milei is not going to stay in the office, the stock market is going down. The growth is going down because markets trust Milei, and that's what they have shown us.
Well, that is very important. Listen, Mani Bashrazad, thank you very much. Sorry it's been short. He's a research associate at the Institute of Economic Affairs.
Well, perhaps some lessons for Rachel Reeves there. Cut spending. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We'll be back with that Reform UK press conference after this.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some bright spells out there today, but it is turning increasingly cloudy as the next weather system moves a band of rain into Northern Ireland and then western Scotland through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. Here's the low responsible. We're saying goodbye to one low, hello to the next. Not much of a gap in between, but some clear spells and dry weather across eastern parts of the UK as we head into the evening before the next system sweeps in. That turning things cloudy for a few hours, a spell of rain and some mountain snow for Scotland before it all gets replaced by showers overnight, some heavy downpours for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England. Clear spells at their most prolonged across parts of Wales, the Midlands as well. Temperatures here dipping to 7 to 9 Celsius, and it'll be chilly for northern Scotland. But otherwise, we've got enough cloud, enough of a wind first thing to prevent things from being too cold. An area of showers or even longer spells of wet weather will affect parts of central Scotland, fringing upon Glasgow and Edinburgh during the morning, but some bright spells are expected through southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, a mix of sunny spells and showers for southern England, the west of England, as well as Wales, but some decent brightness and dry weather for the Midlands, as well as the east of England. Northeast England, a very blustery start to the day, and it will stay windy throughout much of the day over the Pennines and the Highlands of Scotland. We're going to see some further showers pushing into Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland, always most frequent and heaviest across the northwest. So also some showers across the south and southwest of England, perhaps turning more prolonged later. 15 Celsius in the southwest with a southwesterly breeze, a little bit cooler elsewhere. Temperatures not far from average for the time of year. Then into Tuesday nights, we'll see some outbreaks of rain pushing into South Wales and the Midlands. Showers elsewhere, and it stays very mixed for the rest of the week. A damp day in the south on Wednesday, followed by some strong winds later in the week.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can become our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps four, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of October. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
Now, the Reform Party are holding a mystery press conference with Nigel Farage, not pictured here, later on in the show. We'll be there live.
Nigel Farage set out how he would solve the crisis surrounding the inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Stay tuned to GB News to hear what he's got to say.
Number 10 says it expects Epping sex offender Hadush Kabatu to be deported imminently in the next few days. Sources say that he will be returned to his country of origin.
And it's an asylum system failure. Yes, the Home Office has wasted billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on migrant hotels and other luxury perks for illegal migrants, all while the government contractors rake in hefty profits.
Well, the government says it's committed to getting rid, I should say, of the asylum seeker hotels by 2029. But without a solution to the small boats crisis, wherever they put them is going to be controversial.
Looking for investment. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves jets off to Saudi Arabia for investment talks with that oil-rich nation after Labour blasted the Tories for cozying up to the same regime only a few years ago.
And to Pads Andy, yes, Prince Andrew will leave Royal Lodge, but only if he and his ex-wife are each given a brand new house in Windsor.
So Nigel Farage will be speaking imminently, which will be in a matter of moments' time, so do not go anywhere. Very interesting to see. He hasn't explained or said what he'll be talking about, but I suspect it might have something to do with what Sarah Pochin said over the weekend.
I think it is to do with the grooming gang scandal and, of course, the slow approach that the government has had. We don't yet have a chair for this inquiry. There have been grooming gang victims who have quit the inquiry, 4 of them at the last count. I mean, it does seem to be an utter shambles that the government has not been able to get on top of. But I suppose the question mark is, how would reform approach it differently? It does seem like the government has struggled to find someone willing to chair the inquiry, because there are, of course, going to be different elements from different sides of this thing that will... I mean, it's going to be a lot of pressure for whoever chairs this.
Yeah, it will be. And I wonder if Reform UK or there'll be anybody involved on that side of things. Because it would be nice if the government would sort of widen it out to other people who may well have some sort of be able to contribute something positive to it. Although I suspect if he does open it out to questions, though, which I think he probably will do, then the Sarah Pochin, someone may well ask him about that as well.
I have absolutely no doubt that will come up.
It'll almost hijack this, I suspect. I think that's what will happen.
Well, have you seen how much the Labour Party has been putting out of this? They've turned it into attack ads that are strewn across social media. I mean, I think it is a real differential point that they're putting ahead. But, yes, we're expecting, I believe, Danny Kruger to speak there as well. He's, of course, the Conservative MP who defected to Reform. But we will bring you that as soon as it happens live. And in the meantime, let's get an update on those latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 minutes past 2. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom, and some breaking news this lunchtime. Downing Street say that they expect Hadush Kabatu, the migrant sex offender who is mistakenly released from prison, to be deported imminently. Sources say that he will be deported to his country of origin. Number 10 also added that one person has been suspended while the investigation into the release of Kabatu takes place. Prisons are expected to begin enhanced checks following the release from HMP Chelmsford. Kabatu was jailed for 12 months in September for the sexual assault of a 14-year-old girl. Justice Secretary David Lammy will face questions in Parliament today on prison procedures. The Home Office has squandered billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on asylum accommodation, according to a report. The Home Affairs Committee has told the government to get a grip on the UK's asylum accommodation system, labelling it as failed, chaotic and expensive. Here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say.
We had years under the previous government where they didn't process claims. So tens of thousands of people didn't have their claims processed. They were then housed in hotels. That was the policy.
Let's actually take you live now to Westminster, where Nigel Farage is speaking at a Reform UK press conference.
Scandal is that it is the mass industrial scale sexual assault and rape by anonymous, unknown persons, and it's been going on across this country on a scale that is simply unimaginable. It has been going on for many, many decades. It has been going on for too long, and there is a huge racial and ethnic dimension to it. A very large part of these crimes can be attributed to racism in its absolutely worst possible form. And yet this has been met by the collective establishment, and by that I mean social services, police, councillors, members of parliament, governments, by abject cowardice and willful and deliberate neglect. And I first became aware of the scale of 2013. And people were coming up and telling me what had happened in that town, the scale upon which it had happened. And I have to say that initially I looked upon it all with a degree of disbelief. Nothing as large as this, nothing as appalling as this could have happened on this scale without it breaking as a massive public story beforehand. And by 2014, this was a national issue, one that had led to great anger in our country, and much of the rest of the world looking on in absolute horror. They simply couldn't fathom that something like this had happened in the United Kingdom. And yet ever since then, there have been a few inquiries, but very little has happened. This is a stain on our country in every way. It's one of the worst things I think that has ever happened. And there's strong evidence that it's still continuing, and much of it within a few miles of where I'm speaking to you now. As a political issue, well, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, can say what she likes. But as Women's Minister, for a period of 2 years, not one single time did she raise this issue in the House of Commons. And as far as Labour are concerned, well, it's clear, it's very, very clear. They have absolutely no desire for any serious inquiry to go ahead. I spoke this morning to the former police officer Maggie Oliver, who's just about the only person who comes out well, frankly, from the last 20 years of all of this. And she made it pretty clear that Jess Phillips was in no way interested in meeting her at all. The inquiry is flawed, the inquiry will not work, and we want today to offer perhaps a better solution. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to one of the 5 people who was withdrawn from the inquiry. Ellie Reynolds has come down today from the north of London to stand up here and speak to a packed press conference. And she's going to talk about the inquiry, why she's withdrawn, her lack of trust in faith in the way in which the whole thing is being conducted. And I would ask everyone to bear in mind the immense courage that it takes for Ellie to come here and to do this today. Ellie.
Do you need to talk that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello. First of all, I think the inquiry that was set up, you know, it was a mess from the start. When I joined the panel, we knew from the get-go that it was messy. It was a very controlling, it was very gaslighting, manipulative, and you know, we all went on to do the right thing, and that was to seek justice, that was to find the truth, to not be silenced anymore, and to be able to help our future. And you know, we look at our future generations in this as well, because not only are we about ourselves, but we're also about the present victims and the victims that can occur if this shambles continues. The way that we were spoken to was very degrading. It was very controlling. Seek support from family members. We weren't allowed to seek support from each and every survivor on the panel. Typically, you find with survivors is that they will confide in each other because we have been through near enough the same thing. So that is the better way that we can seek support. That was taken from us. There was a motivation in that as well to widen the panel, and I think personally that was down to the fact that they don't want to vocalise the ethnicity of these men. We almost felt uncomfortable vocalising the ethnicity of these men, and like we shouldn't. Pretty much when we were in that inquiry, we were stripped from our voices, and we're not going to be stripped from our voices anymore to maintain the higher-ups' comfortability. I decided to withdraw because, you know, my head and my heart were saying two different things. My head was saying, you can really make a change in this, you can really help the future. But in my heart, it wasn't morally correct for me to maintain myself on the panel because of how it was going. It was rigged from the start. I mean, when we got the bios about the former police officer and the former social worker, it was very, very locked down. It was very password protected. We couldn't show it to anybody. We couldn't screenshot it. It was just awful. And I mean, when you're looking at bios of two former institutions that failed us, we were never going to be confident in the first place. We've spent years of our lives trying to grab the attention from police officers and social workers, to be told that we're attention seeking, to be told to shut up and go home. It's been nothing but awful. So when you put these two candidates in front of us, none of the survivors were going to ever sit there and be happy with it. You know, personally, I asked and I said I'm not keen. However, we were also told to propose two questions to each suspected chair. They've left now, but we had to pose these questions 24 hours prior to meeting them, which again I wasn't happy with. I asked why they needed 24 hours. Why couldn't they come back with an answer instantly when they were asked it? We were told what to ask, when to ask it. It was all in all very controlled. And then to top it off, we also had then Jess Phillips calling us a liar in the House of Commons. And the way that she conducted herself alone was absolutely appalling. But to be called a liar by somebody so high up, we're used to it now. We've been called that all our lives. It's just awful that somebody had to do that and degrade us even more when she is a safeguarding minister. She should be safeguarding our children, protecting them. And I do not think that she's capable, which is also why I've called for her to stand down. Keir Starmer obviously had written a letter. I don't necessarily believe he wrote it himself, but that's my personal opinion, to which I replied, we don't want a polite letter. We want accountability. We want justice. We want the truth. And we want it to stop happening to our future. Our future is at risk the longer that this happens for. And we can't afford, I mean, what is it now? Approximately 250,000 victims across the country. That's 250,000 too many, in my opinion. It shouldn't have ever got. Scandal is now national, it's a problem and it needs to be fixed. So I withdrew myself because I know that I can make a change, just not through that panel. I will speak and I will raise awareness and I will say what's corrupt, and that inquiry, that was corrupt.
Very good. Wow. Thank you. That was pretty clear. Grab a seat and then we'll do questions.
Thank you.
Well, that was pretty straightforward and very clear. Well done, Ellie. This inquiry is dead in the water. Nearly 5 months have gone by, and what has happened? Nothing. They can't even agree who the chair is going to be. Starmer tells us that the Baroness Casey report forbids it from being a judge. If you read the report carefully, you'll realise that simply isn't true, which, of course, is in common with very many of the things that he says. 5 gang victims, those that feel insulted, like Ellie, have withdrawn from the inquiry. But you'll be told, there are 5 who insist that Jess Phillips stays in place and that the inquiry continues. But here's the truth about the other 5. Just as I said at the start of this press conference, there are 2 very distinctly different groups of young people who were sexually abused and raped by adults. And what has happened with this inquiry is the government have quite deliberately, from the very start, widened the scope out from those who were victims of Pakistani grooming gangs and brought in other women. And by the way, I'm not demeaning or diminishing in any way the treatment that Samantha Walker and the other 4 have been through. I'm just pointing out they were victims, survivors now, of a very different kind of sexual abuse. And what the country demands, and indeed, what people like Ellie demand, is a laser focus on this very, very unique, and perhaps for many people, difficult to understand phenomenon that has now been going on in our country for decades. My own view is the government would like to simply kick the can down the road, to hold a public inquiry that goes on for such a long time that it or nothing before the next general election. You don't believe me? Well, have a look at the COVID inquiry, which goes on month after month, year after year, and which today, by the way, has just gone through £192 million in cost, making it even more expensive than the never-ending bloody Sunday inquiry. That is what we are in. I want to suggest, propose today, a better, quicker, more open and more transparent solution. The people of this country place their faith in elected politicians and in Parliament at every general election. Although I think it would be fair to say that that level of trust and faith is probably at the moment at an all-time low. So what I want to do is to offer Parliament a chance to re-establish itself in the minds of people as a good, fair and just institution. It's time for Parliament to step up and to do its job. Do you remember back in 2009 when Sir Fred Goodwin was ordered to appear before the Banking Commission, a new committee that had been set up between the House of Commons and the House of Lords, and Goodwin had to go to appear. And I just don't think we realise just how much power Parliament actually has if it chooses to use it. Select committees have the power to summon anybody. They could summon a former social worker. They could summon a former police officer. They could summon a former councillor. They could summon a former member of Parliament. And I find it hard to believe that MPs in all of these constituencies would not have had letters or emails or pointers as to what was going on. Because unlike the previous examples of sexual abuse that I've talked about, none of this was being hidden. There were groups of up to a dozen plus men waiting around in takeaway, kebab shops, taxi shops. Everyone in these communities knew that something was happening and that something was very, very wrong. So Parliament has that ability. It also has the ability to sanction those if anybody refuses to appear. It also has the power to require that people swear an oath. And the important thing about swearing an oath is that if what you say in that forum is deliberately misleading or untrue, well then, of course, you could face prosecution for perjury. These are the extraordinary powers that Parliament has if it chooses to use it. And I am saying here is the most enormous opportunity for Parliament, and indeed for this government, to restore some public trust in the institution and those that currently inhabit it on an issue that has been gnawing away at our public consciences for well over a decade. And I repeat the point, to which the rest of the world looks on in shock and in horror. I will be, with my colleagues, meeting the Speaker this evening. I will put these points to him. I know that he himself is very keen to re-establish Parliament at the centre of our national debate in this country. And I will tomorrow write to Dame Karen Bradley, the chair of the Home Affairs Committee, suggesting a subcommittee is set up. And yes, let's broaden it to a commission, and let's get those from the House of Lords who understand this subject involved as well. The advantages of this Well, the first one is it can be done incredibly quickly. The second of this is it'll take place in what we still know as the mother of parliaments, and perhaps re-establish some trust in the institution. And it will happen in the full glare of media. And it won't take years to conclude. It will take many weeks. It might take a couple of months, but so be it. And it will have the power to put in the Palace of Westminster those who are suspected of colluding in the cover-up of one of the most shameful stories in the history of our islands. And I'll be putting all of that to the Speaker tomorrow, and I hope and expect to get other figures in public life to come out and support this idea. It can happen quickly. Let's make it happen. Thank you. Right, loads of questions. Some will be for me, but some of this on this I'll obviously bring it. Great stuff. Okay, we have a lot of questions. I'll do my best to get through them as quickly as I can within reason. Harry Farley from the BBC.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. Harry Farley from the BBC. The Prime Minister has accused your MP, Sarah Pochin, of shocking racism and the sort of thing that will tear our country apart. Do you accept what Sarah Pochin said was racist, and are you considering any disciplinary action? And on what you've announced today, you were one of the ones leading the call for a national inquiry. Is this not rowing back on what you previously called for?
I'd love a national inquiry if it was laser-focused on the grooming gangs issue. But being that, to begin with, the government didn't want to do it, then was forced to U-turn and accepted it, now that 5 months have gone by, I actually think the public are running out of patience, and certainly the survivors are running out of patience, that anything will actually ever happen that is of any value at all. I don't think Parliament should turn itself into a court on a regular basis, but I do think there are times when Parliament needs to use the power that it has to re-establish public trust. So no, I now believe this is the fastest, the most effective and the most open route that we can possibly use on that. The words that Sarah Pochin used in response to a caller into talk radio on Saturday morning were without ugly, and taken on their own, could be read to be very, very unpleasant indeed. I am unhappy with what she has done. I can't underestimate that, and she fully knows how I feel. However, it was in the broader context of DEI madness in the advertising industry, something which anybody with half a brain can recognise has been going on since about 2021. So I understand the basic point, but the way she put it, the way she worded it, was wrong and was ugly. And if I thought that the intention behind it was racist, more action than I have to date, and that is because I don't. Thank you. Moving on to Olivia Utley from GB News.
Hi, Olivia Utley, GB News. Some of the survivors and whistleblowers have talked about the danger of this inquiry marking its own homework, so police officers and social workers being involved. MPs were involved in the cover-up of this scandal as well. Couldn't you argue that a select committee investigation would be MPs just marking their own homework?
Very few of the MPs that are still in the Commons today are the same MPs that were there at the time that these abuses were happening, is the answer I would give to that. The basic point, I mean, I think your argument, Ellie, make your own, you're more than capable, but I think your basic argument was that you didn't want social workers or police chairing this inquiry.
Yeah, absolutely. Social workers and police officers are the very institutions that have failed us for decades and decades. And I think what people are forgetting as well is that institutions almost materialises it. These are real people behind these that are constantly looking at us like we're nothing and sending us away and silencing us. So I think my priority was just somebody with a heart, somebody with a little bit of humanity that would be able to fight our corner and do what we've been promised for decades, and that was to be safeguarded.
Thank you. Harry Horton, ITV News.
Thank you very much. Harry Horton, ITV News. You've criticised just now the leader of the Conservative Party, you've criticised the Labour government. If you were to set up this inquiry you've talked about in Parliament, it would require you to work with MPs from other parties. Why would they do that when you're criticising their leadership?
Criticising? Have you heard what they say about me? This is called politics. People chuck rocks at each other. What I'm proposing here, by the way, this is not a Reform UK proposal. This is a proposal that I'm going to put to the Speaker this evening, and I'm going to put to Karen Bradley. This is a proposal for Parliament to pick this issue up on a cross-party basis and to run with it. And you know something? If the government picked up this idea that I'm putting forward, do you know who the biggest beneficiary would be? Wouldn't be Reform UK, it'd be the Labour government for actually doing the right thing. So I do reject the idea that what I'm putting forward is a partisan idea on behalf of Reform UK.
And just a second question, if I can, on Sarah Poachin. She said that the sight of brown people and black people in adverts drives her mad. Can you not see... You say you don't think the intention was racist, but can you not see why the Prime Minister, why the Liberal Democrats, why the Conservatives say that they think those remarks were racist? Are you prepared to label those remarks racist?
I think I've answered the question already. The remarks were ugly, clumsy, put in a way that if you take them literally as they are on their own, you can put the worst of all interpretations on it. I understand the context in which she said it. I don't like the way in which she did it. I am very unhappy with her indeed. But if I felt the intention was deliberately and genuinely racist, I would have taken a different course of action. Thank you. Moving on to Sam Coates from Sky News.
Thank you. Ellie Rellens, I'm curious, you paint a very interesting picture of what it was like being in those meetings, talking about the inquiry. You've talked about what happened in those meetings. We're here to listen to tales of accountability. Can you name names? Who was saying these things? Who was being bullying? Who was being controlling? Were they Home Office officials? Who were they? Were they senior? And who do you think they were answering to? If there's any more detail that you can give about exactly what was going on, that would be appreciated. Nigel Farage, do you want to be on this commission? And a lot of this comes down to the Home Office. There are suggestions today, look at the Asylum hotels situation, that the Home Office should be split. Do you think that's a good idea? And finally, on Sarah Poachin, can you explain why it isn't racist? You spent a lot of time in your career looking at issues of race. You've thought about this deeply, but can you explain why you don't think those remarks were racist?
Ellie, go first. Who was it?
Naming names, I don't know whether I'm allowed to do that, but what I can confirm is that it was the Home Office and it was NWG Network. They're an organisation that work very closely with the Home Office, and they are meant to be survivor-based, survivor-led. As for the names, you can probably find who does what online. I just don't know if I'm allowed to say it.
Well, I think you might be able to privately after the event.
But I do believe that they were answering higher up, especially by the way that they were coming across. They were, you have to look at us survivors. Many of us are unable to work with mental health conditions that are lifelong after suffering the abuse, and they were paying every survivor on the panel at £50 an hour.
There you are. That hasn't come out so far, which is very interesting, is it not?
Well, it has now.
Does it? And it may well be, Sam, that afterwards, through briefings, we might get one or two names that you might have access to, as would the rest of the room. The hotel. Who was the first person to expose the hotels? Me in 2020, going up to a hotel just west of Birmingham to say when they cross the channel, this is what happens to them. Yes, of course, there are certain companies that have made massive profits. You really have to look at the share price of one or two of them, and like you, even I'm being cautious today because I'd rather not be sued, to see what an absolute racket the whole thing has been. Yeah, so the Labour government can sort of blame the Tories, and the Tories can sort of blame the Home Office, and maybe Labour in time can blame the whole Home Office. Who's in charge of the Home Office? The British government. So why don't the British government get a grip? We were told over 20 years ago, in Blair's term, first term, that the Home Office was not fit for purpose. Well, it's about time somebody in government had the guts to deal with it. I think the most interesting thing about the hotel story that hasn't really been reported unless I've missed it, is there are tenders now out until 2036 at least, which shows you this government has absolutely no intention of putting a stop to illegal immigration at all. And on Sarah Poachin, I think I've given quite a few answers on that subject already. Paul McNamara, Channel 4 News.
Afternoon, Mr. Farage. Just the one question.
Just the one? Sky R7.
Hadn't noticed. Since Friday, we've heard from a number of people across the prison service, across politics, saying that, look, it's a crumbling system at the moment. Too many prisoners, not enough spaces for them, not enough prison officers. This morning, the Chief Inspector of the prisons, Charlie Taylor, said that they're relying on a large number of West African prison staff. Their fate is not certain, given changes to visa regulations with the Home Office. Under a reform government, would you carve out some sort of way forward for prison staff to be recruited from abroad? Would you raise the salaries of prison officers to make it a more attractive prospect? If so, where's the money come from? Or would you simply say to the prison service, them's the breaks, deal with it?
I think you might have missed the point on this, that we don't object to people from the rest of the world coming to Britain if they pay their taxes, work, and become part of our, community. And what we were arguing, the other week was that over 1 million, maybe nearly 2 million people will be eligible to claim indefinite leave to remain over the course of the last 4 years. They are the consequence of the Boris wave. And once they get indefinite leave to remain, every one of them can fully access the benefit system in this country and bring dependents into the country. And that this is financially, potentially, a ticking time bomb that some think tanks say could cost us over £200 billion in the decades to come. So let's be clear on that point. On the prison service, look, we recruited over the course of a summer Vanessa Frake, thought to be the toughest prison governor in the country. She is working alongside Colin Sutton as part of our Justice and Home Affairs brief, getting us ready for policy for the next general election. All that I do know within the prison service, yes, of course, all institutions want more money, and they almost certainly have been underfunded, but one of the big problems within is morale, because many of the senior prison officers have been leaving the prison service to get work that pays as much, if not more, in private security, and being replaced by a lot of people who are deeply inexperienced. And I think what this Kabatu release showed the other day, or made us all realise, is this is happening all too often. So I'm not going to give you any full answers right now, but I'm going to say that as a party, we're very much on the case. And what we're doing with Vanessa in this area is what we intend to do in all areas. Let's get people with decades of experience, across whatever brief it may be, to come and help us put together the right policies. And who knows, if we won an election, people like that would find themselves as ministers. Think of that. Ministers in charge of briefs that they actually knew something about. Be quite remarkable, wouldn't it? OK, moving on to Katie Harris from The Express.
Katie Harris from the Daily Express. Do you think Sadiq Khan has failed grooming gang victims in London, and should he resign?
Has he failed grooming gang victims? Yes, he's been denying that there's grooming going on in London. The police, the Met, have been denying grooming is going on in London. I can tell you today, somebody who's in this room has spoken to social services in London who've openly said there are grooming gangs in London. And of course, it's more difficult to spot a particular type of grooming gang in central London than it is in Rotherham, just for the sheer size of the city, by the different communities that live in this city. Yes, maybe, Maggie Oliver made this point, maybe London is the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. And it looks like we're very, very close to that. Claire Ellicott, Daily Mail.
Hello. Under your proposals for a parliamentary inquiry, how would you ensure victims actually get justice? Because MPs obviously have no power to bring criminal convictions against them.
Because one of the... Well, I'll let Ellie answer this as well. I believe that what the victim survivors want is for those that are guilty to come to justice. And Parliament acting as a court, not an inquiry. What I'm actually calling for here, Claire, is for Parliament to become a court and that we discover, under oath, the truth about who knew what and when and why they refused to say anything, and so that there can be prosecutions for negligence that follow. Your thoughts on this?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, all we've waited for years is closure and not feeling like we're stuck in the middle, like we're not believed and like we're silenced. We want the justice, we want the truth, and we want the protection for our future generations. That is crucial to us. It's crucial for the truth to come out. It's crucial for accountability and people to be prosecuted, yes, but it's also crucial that we can hammer down on this now so it stops happening to our children.
Quite right. Quite right. Daniel Martin, Telegraph.
Hi, Daniel Martin from The Telegraph. You said Labour wants to kick the can down the road on grooming gangs. So how can you be confident that your committee will get to the bottom of this when the majority will have to be Labour MPs, presumably?
Look, you know, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen unless Parliament as a whole, which includes a lot of Labour MPs, embraces it. I accept that. They might reject it. But I do actually seriously say to you that given their current level of standing in this country, I'm offering them an opportunity to take an idea, steal an idea from me, and try to a large extent, actually, to make it their own. As I say, I'm going to see the Speaker later on today. We'll do whatever we can this week to raise this issue in the Chamber, and if they reject it, they reject it. But it is a much cleaner, much quicker, much better solution that actually could lead to righting some of the wrongs that Ellie, and by the way, I mean, did you hear when she said that up to 250,000 people in Britain may well have been victims of grooming gangs? It is mass, industrial, racially motivated sexual assault and rape on a scale that I think even now we're still struggling to even believe. Thank you. Lucy Dunn from The Spectator.
Lucy Dunn from The Spectator. Nigel, you've always maintained that Nathan Gill was a rotten apple, but The Observer reported at the weekend that two other Brexit Party MEPs spouted the same pro-Russia lines in the European Parliament. What action, if any, are you taking to investigate connections to Russia? And if I may, Labour MP Lucy Powell appeared on the BBC to describe grooming gangs as a dog whistle issue. She, at the weekend, was the victor of the deputy leadership contest for Labour. What is your reaction to that?
Look, you know, Lucy Powell says dog whistle. There are people like Jess Phillips under enormous electoral pressure, not to be too unpleasant to a particular sector of the community that might vote her out of office next time round, along with dozens of other Labour MPs. Starmer just sort of would hope and wish that the whole thing would simply go away, and that's what we've had. You know, delay after delay after delay, finally a U-turn forced. Nothing will come out of this inquiry. Nothing of any value will come out of this inquiry, and I doubt it'll happen before the next general election, which is why what I offer is a firm solution. I've heard of no evidence of any wrongdoing against any other former MP of UKIP or the Brexit Party. I've heard of no other evidence of any wrongdoing from any of them. Opinions are opinions. I can't comment beyond that, other than I'm deeply shocked by Nathan Gill, you know, who I'd known for a long time, and who, for goodness sake, was a bishop. He used to preach every Sunday morning in the Mormon church. I mean, I thought he was so incorruptible he wouldn't even drink coffee. So I'm pretty shocked by it. But there you are. It just goes to show, you never absolutely know anybody. You really don't. Noah Hoffman from The Sun.
Thank you, Nigel.
Wondering if I could get your reaction, please, to the march in Tower Hamlets, where there were hordes of masked men. Downing Street refuses to say, when asked, that British Jews are currently being threatened by a rise in Islamist extremists. Like, they literally will not acknowledge that. What would you do to tackle this issue under a Reform government?
Well, you know, you raised that point, and if you really want to talk about racism over the weekend, then, you know, whilst I've already said I thought Sarah's comments were ugly and out of place, they're not intentioned to be deeply unpleasant, there was proper racism happening in Tower Hamlets over the weekend, but no one's asked a question about that until you. Yeah. None of the broadcasters are even interested in that, and I doubt they'll show the pictures. Yeah. Intimidation, to the point of sort of basically urging the mass wipeout of huge numbers of Jewish people. I have to say, Noah, I thought the scenes of those men, in many cases masks on, women brushed aside, not welcome to be any part of it. I actually think it's one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my whole life. And what a telling moment. The leftist stand up to racism were there with their banners. And one says to one of these mass marchers, "We're on the same side." To which the response comes, "No, we're not." Maybe one day, the deluded left will wake up to realise they've been with very strange bedfellows. Organisations like Queers for Palestine spring to mind pretty quickly. No, I thought the scenes were absolutely terrifying. It was like a foreign invading army marching through our streets, and I defy anyone in this room to tell me that's wrong. I really, genuinely do. OK, we're halfway through. Ben Clatworthy from The Times. I'll try and speed it up.
That's fine, don't worry.
All right. Ben's there.
On the comments that Sarah Pouchin made, you say they were ugly and were very unpleasant indeed. However, going back to earlier points, can you explain how they're not racist?
I've already said, taken on their own and not in context, you could read them that way. Within the broader picture of this sort of collective madness under the DEI banner that has overcome the advertising industry, that is the context in which they're made. But they were very unwise words to utter in any context, all right? I don't think I can be clearer about that, but I don't believe they had a deep racist intention behind them. If I did, I would have acted differently. And I think if you look, Ben, at my career, over a quarter of a century in public life, you know, I've always made sure, whichever party I've been running or in a senior position, that we didn't align with anything like that at all. And I've been very strict on that, I'm going way back to the early 2000s, in that being the view, and one that I've upheld right throughout my time in politics and public life. OK.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah,
as well?
please do.
I find it quite, like, overwhelming as well that every single one of these medias has said something about a comment that was made by Sarah, which is understandable, absolutely fine. Yet it's taken medias decades to recognise grooming gangs that are coming over and raping our children because they're white. That is also racially motivated, and it is racist.
%, 100%. Gosh. That's very strong. That is very, very strong indeed. Mari Novick, Financial Times. No, well done, you're quite right.
Hello. Ellie, the first question is for you. So now we've heard from, you know, roughly 10 of you guys who's on this inquiry, because we've heard from you and Fiona and those 4, and then also we've heard from 5 others who's actually said that, you know, we're okay to broaden out the scope of the inquiry. Can you just give a little bit of thoughts about what you think the rest, as in the 20 other people on the inquiry, mean and think about this?
Yeah, so obviously there's 5 that left, 5 that supported Jess, and that's absolutely fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. We withdrew because we knew it wasn't right, it was corrupted. And in regards to widening the remit, they're going to say that because it was going to focus on grooming gangs, and they're not survivors of grooming gangs, so they're going to want it widened, which I also understand. But equally as well, it would not shock me if they were being paid off to say something as such, because there is many, many people that agree with us that still haven't come out and said it.
Thank you very much. And then I have one more question, please.
Go on.
Can you just explain when you two first got to know each other?
No. Right, moving on to Will Standring of Bloomberg News. We'll keep our personal life out of this, shall we? Sorry, it's going to have some fun doing it.
Hi there. Last week, in an interview with Bloomberg's Michelle Hussain, said that reform-led councils have cut $500 million.
Yep.
Analysis. So I was just wondering, does this include spending that was in previous administration budgets?
There will be a major reveal on all of this and much more coming, I think, on November the 10th. Gosh, I got something right for once. November the 10th, Richard Tice will be in the chair at a big press conference, which you'll be welcome to, and which will lay out the cuts that we've already made, but perhaps not advertised, not put out to you guys in a way that's perhaps as coordinated as it ought to have been. November the 10th, your question will be answered. Alita Adu from The Guardian.
Alita Adu from The Guardian. Nigel, I just have to ask, under a Reform UK government, would parts of the Equality Act that protect people from racial discrimination still exist? Just on poaching, again, do you understand how her remarks likening anger and the colour of people's skin, black and Asian, can feel to people who are black and Asian? And finally, just on grooming gangs, there are members of the public and even a former police chief who have said that they are concerned that grooming gangs victims are becoming political football in this debate. What would you say to them?
Quite right, they are, absolutely. As we can see very, very clearly with the begging letter that Keir Starmer wrote to you to say, please come back into the inquiry. As we can see with the five who've now politically said that actually Jess Phillips must stay in place when they themselves are not victims of grooming gangs at all. This is intensely political. And I'm offering Parliament a way of actually de-party politicising it. Yes, I accept there would be more Labour MPs on there, but you've got the House of Lords too, that with a commission could provide balance across the political spectrum. So I'm trying in many, many ways to depoliticise it. I do understand that all sorts of comments can cause harm. Absolutely. But I would ask you, when you report about the racist row from the weekend, to make sure you put Tower Hamlets in your article too. What Sarah said was ugly, misplaced, wrong, and taken in the wrong context could be seen to be awful. It was of a bigger conversation about the advertising industry. What happened in Tower Hamlets at the weekend was outright racist, violent, and dangerous. And as for the Equalities Act, well, I'm not sure that it protected any of these girls, did it?
Exactly.
I'm not sure it protected anybody. Okay, right, just a few more to do. Natasha Clark, LBC.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. You say of Sarah Poachin's comments they were not intended to be racist. Do you think that you have to be intentionally racist to make a racist comment? And to Ellie, you say how you were gaslit and manipulated. Is there anything that you think the government or the Home Office could say that would make you come back on the panel? You say that you felt this was rigged. Would you mind spelling out how? Do you think there was a predetermined inquiry or outcome they were trying to steer towards? Thank you.
Absolutely, it was rigged. The questions, we were being told what to ask and when to ask them. They already had the terms of reference drafted. We were on that panel to help shape the terms of reference. They were already done. So what was the point in us being there? And in regards to the letter from Mr. Starmer, I replied to that and I said, I do not want a polite letter from him. I want accountability, which we're never going to get. I think at this point now, I have no faith whatsoever. I had 1%, and him and Jess Phillips have absolutely crushed it. I would not touch that panel again with a 10-foot barge pole. Absolutely not.
With words, it's always intentions that matter. People make mistakes, but it's intentions that matter. David Lynch, PA.
Thanks very much. Yeah, hello, can you see me over here? Yeah, great. This is a question for Ellie first. Could you explain your decision to come here today and sit alongside a opposition political leader? And for yourself as well, Mr. Farage, just want to cast our mind back to the dim and distant past of last Friday, the Caerphilly by-election.
Yep.
The result there, I think what we saw was what might be described as tactical voting coming out to beat reform. What do you think that says about voters across the country, and does it show that your supporters maybe peaked, for example?
My choice was because, quite frankly, us girls and young boys, because young boys are nowhere near as mentioned as they should be, we will go to anybody that will listen. I've sat in my local town and I've had meetings with the MP. She's Labour. I begged for help and she openly admitted that she was discussing my case with my local police force and they said how much they'd failed me. I offered to do many things to raise awareness. She said that she'd do it and I'm still waiting nearly a year later. I will go to anybody that will listen and anybody that's going to make a change to this country.
Well done. Caerphilly, I thought at the start of the day we'd get 12,000 votes. We did. I thought 12,000 votes would be enough. It wasn't. Couple of factors. Number one, you see all sorts of by-elections that turn into two-horse races. Think about Lib Dem by-elections over the years. So you get a different pattern of voting sometimes in a by-election to that you get across a national election or even, you know, a Welsh Senate Parliament election next year. Was there an element of tactical voting? Yeah, there was. Was it as big as the London media think it is? No. And I'll tell you why. Because the Plaid candidate had been a councillor in the town for decades. The Plaid candidate had stood 14 times unsuccessfully, more than me. How about that? All right? 14 times he'd stood. He'd stood in every general election since 1983, every Welsh Assembly and Senate election, and this was an incredibly well-known figure. And when we looked at the boxes for the centre of Caerphilly, you literally could have weighed the Plaid vote. So many people who knew this guy turned out to vote for him. So a bit of both, but I think we can over perhaps egg how big the tactical vote was. I do think there were Labour voters who went for Plaid because they just saw it as a two-horse race. Yes, but the other factor I think matters. Was they disappointed? Not really. I think 36% was pretty blooming good. And tell you what's interesting about the elections next May, they'll be fought under D'Hondt. If that result was repeated across, it'd be Caerphilly and Blaenau next year, there'd be 3 Plaid members and 3 Reform members. So I can't be disappointed by that in any way at all. Right, we're cracking on here. Caitlin Doherty, The Independent.
Hi, apologies, I've got a computer on my lap. With reference to Sarah Poachin, you said that if you had thought... I
think I've said quite a lot of Sarah Poachin, to be honest. Unless you've got a very new angle, I think people have maybe had enough of this, but go on.
Mr Farage, I just want to ask another question. You said if you thought the intention behind it was racist, you would have taken a lot more action than you have today. Can we take that to assume that you have taken some action, and if you have, can you give us some details on what it is? And secondly, on your conversations with the Speaker, have you spoken to the Speaker before you've told us about your plans today? And if you don't get the go-ahead from the Speaker, are there any other avenues that you can pursue?
The relationship between the Speaker is a private relationship. He's somebody that I have the most enormous respect for in every single way. And as far as Sarah Poe, I've answered every angle of that question I could possibly ever answer. I've been as upfront and as clear and as frank as I possibly could be. Lauren Bell-Cross from the Jewish Chronicle. Where is Lauren? Not present? Okay. I've got Antonello Guerrera from La Repubblica on my list. Hello.
Thank you. You just talked about re-establishing Parliament at the centre of the national debate in this country. Do you think Parliament should have a say also in Prince Andrew's future and have the authority to scrutinise and possibly strip him of his titles? Thank you.
Well, the nice Liberals would like to hound him. I think, you know, physically out of the country, never to be seen again. Frankly, I think Parliament should only interfere in areas like this. In a real extreme situation. I suspect that the punishments coming to Prince Andrew are far from over. I think we're in the middle of a process. He's renounced the dukedom. He undoubtedly will be looking for a new home very soon, probably somewhere where it's a lot warmer and sunnier than it is here. And I think as somebody who is down and on the way out, there's no particular need to give them a kicking on the way. Now, if he was to fight back against that and say, no, I am staying where I am, and actually I'm going to start reusing the Duke title, then Parliament should act. But to do it right now, I don't think, frankly, is very near the top of the list of national priorities, unless, of course, you enjoy, hounding people out of their own existences. Last question, Robert Hutton, the critic. A lot of questions.
Hi there. In January, you said you wanted a full public inquiry that nothing else would do, and people like the Prime Minister said a public inquiry will take forever, they're a complete nightmare, and you said he was stalling, and now you've got a public inquiry and you've denounced it. How long into the parliamentary inquiry do you think you'd be denouncing that? Because it would have there's lots of reasons we could come up with to denounce it right now. It'll have a lay majority and so on. And sorry, one other one, just because, would you like advertising companies to use fewer black actors?
I'm just not going to demean myself by answering that, other than to say the DEI industry has gone crackers. You know it, I know it, we all know it. That's where we are. It's October. I said in January, let's do something. It's October. And nothing's going to happen this side of 2026. And there'll be no results until 2029. And hang on. This is not an inquiry now. I've upped the ante on this. I'm now asking for Parliament to do one of those things it rarely does, although it did do back in 2011. It did do it in 2011, even after Fred Goodwin, or Fred the Shred, whatever you want to call him, it did. The Public Accounts Committee did do this. It did get people there under oath to talk about waste of public money. We all seem to have forgotten that. I'm saying for one of those rare occasions that Parliament turns itself into a court before Christmas. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Very good.
And welcome to the Martin Dodman Show. It's just approaching 3 p.m. on this Monday afternoon. You're joining us there off the back of a quite astonishing press conference from Nigel Farage, of course, the leader of Reform UK, with a rape gang survivor, Ellie Ann Reynolds. A huge amount to summarise. Let me start at the beginning. Mr. Farage began by talking about the industrial scale rape of white working class girls across Britain for many decades. It has been going on for many, many decades, he declared. It has been going on for too long. And there is a huge racial and ethnic dimension to it. A very large part of these crimes could be attributed to racism in its absolutely worst possible form. He then went on to detail how it required a fresh approach. This is a stain on our country, Mr Farage declared, in every way, one of the worst things that has ever happened, and it's still going on. He tore into Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, not one single time did she raise this issue in the House of Commons Labour. They have absolutely no desire for any kind of inquiry to go ahead. Today, we want to offer a better alternative to this shambles of a Labour inquiry. Ellie Ann Reynolds then spoke. She was absolutely scathing in her appraisal of the inquiry. She was on the panel of that inquiry and she resigned from it last week. She said the inquiry was a mess from the start. It was controlling, gaslighting, manipulative. This is a shambles, she said. We were spoken to in a very degrading way, and they don't want to vocalise the ethnicity of these men. A huge amount to go through over these next 3 hours, and you join me at 3 o'clock on the button. Nigel Farage declared Labour's grooming gangs inquiry is dead in the water as he called for Parliament to set up its own probe into group-based sex abuse. Ellie Reynolds, one of the 5 grooming gang survivors to withdraw from the victims panel, said the inquiry was a mess from the start.
Down to the fact that they don't want to